in a unique situation in the sense that his budget is funded from two funds, the EMS lit and his operational budget, Fund 1151 and Fund 1236, that we have to think about the revenue more on those maybe than we do on some of the other budgets. And so, as Commissioner Ewitz pointed out at the department head meetings, there's no statutory limit that says we have to limit his budget to those two funds, but to the extent that we could, we were trying to, just for the sake of Stephen's sanity and administration by the auditor's office and everything, to try to not spread that across three if we could avoid it. So with that as background, I guess I'll turn it over to Stephen, and I guess I just wanted to say he's not pulling this stuff just out of thin air. We've talked about, some of us have talked about that, trying to give him some guidance on how we thought we could work the budget here. So with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, well, if we want to start in the 100s, obviously the salary survey is, I'm sure, the big topic of discussion for everybody right now. But with our salary survey, I guess I'll just offer this context. When we were first reached out to give our input for salaries, I explained to them that with our staff having an average of 55.4 hours per week, that our annual was going to show market value, but our hourly was going to show short. Well, of course, they did the salary survey based off of the hourly rate. So it shows that we had quite a ways to go to get caught up in, especially in the EMT and supervisor category. So ultimately, I don't feel like it's feasible for us to go to the midpoint, or I'll also say, fiscally responsible for us to go to the midpoint in the EMT and the supervisor line. The paramedic midpoint was a 14.48% raise. And so with discussions with Alan, Mary, Carol, and Todd, the number that we kind of came up with was 14.48%, which is the midpoint for the paramedics, and then 15% for EMTs and supervisors.
Yep.
Are there any questions on that?
And there are changes to the numbers of your staffing. You might get into that a little bit.
Yep. So first, Josh has advocated tremendously for EMS to be further supported and staffed appropriately. And one of the issues that we run into while we are fully staffed, the issue that we run into is that to take a page from Jordan Brewer's book in basketball terminology, is I'm showing up to a basketball game with 5 players. And so I'm trying to play an 82 game season with 5 players, and people get sick, they get hurt, they want vacation time. And I'm relying on PRN people to pick up these shifts who already have full-time jobs. And so to help alleviate that burden, the solution that I've offered is that we hire 3 more paramedics. We pull the paramedic supervisors off of the ambulances and put them in a chase vehicle. In the instance that there is a call-off, scheduled vacation, scheduled personal time, anything like that, the supervisor would come from the chase vehicle to the ambulance position. So we would not have any overtime, and we would also not be down or out of service for one of our ambulances. In the instance we have a couple call-offs, I can then fill in. Obviously, this is a significant increase in personnel funding, and so to help counteract that balance, is my proposal is that we remove PRN paramedics, which would be a saving of $212,000 between part-time paramedics and my estimated overtime. So combining those two, I think we'll be able to save $212,000, which puts us at a net increase of $334,874.
Now, take a moment. One thing we don't really have in our budget book is a detailed analysis of the revenue side, and there's a lot there's as it is now and as we expect it to be, and we're in a kind of an awkward transition period between one to the other. Stephen, can you talk just real quickly about some of the, refresh our memories on some of the changes that have happened in law, state law, that are going to have a direct impact on your revenue stream?
So last year, Medicaid now matches Medicare reimbursement in the state of Indiana. That is about 3 times higher reimbursement rate than what we'd previously been getting. The problem is we just got our 2021 reimbursement from Medicaid, so we're a couple years behind. So we're not going to see it until at least 26 is the reality of it. Then also January 1 of 25, they are now allowing an increased billing rate to private insurance. And on our current payer mix, which it fluctuates every year, but our current payer mix, we're looking at a pretty significant possibility of increasing revenue by increasing our billing rate to our private insurances. What the state allows is they've got some specifications through there, but whatever the county agrees upon as the billing rate, up to a maximum of 400% of Medicare value. So the proposal that I've talked with Alan and Jordan about is that we increase to 400% of the Medicare value to optimize our return on private insurance.
And the last thing I might have you mention is the improved certification or training level you want your staff to have that would change your billing coding.
Yeah, so if you break down the annual, there's no hiding that this is a significant annual income for our paramedics. And so where I stand on this is we have to be the best of the best. We have to prove that worth. And so what my expectation moving forward will be is that they have to become board certified critical care flight paramedics. That shows that they're the top 1% in their field, credential-wise. What my proposal will be is that we give them 18 months to take their first exam, and then they have 2 years to complete it because they're allowed a few retests.
But that allows you to bill at a different.
It does allow us to bill at a higher rate for critical care and specialty care transport for interfacility transfers. Another caveat with this is a couple of years ago when I first started, we met with IU Health and we renegotiated how we were doing interfacility transfers due to the high demand and high volume associated with that and the burnout our staff was facing. The way we have it structured right now is dependent on operational status, whether we have all 4 ambulances in service or we're 3 out of 4 ambulances in service, it influences what transfers we accept. So if we can increase our capacity to do more transfers by being fully staffed, it's not increasing our request, it's just facilitating us to say yes more. Ultimately, with that, we'll see a return in income as well, or in revenue. So.
Right.
Will that certification come from your teaching?
So we provide them a resource already that's IBSC certified as a credentialing course, but then also through Dolores and we'll make sure that they get the education they need, but it's through the International Board of Specialty Care Certifications is who they'll have to test through.
Okay.
So I'll personally say I don't think that the test is bad. I see the vast majority of our staff having good success with it.
Okay.
Is there a cost associated with the program and the test?
There is, and I built that into our certification classes. I built that in as a fee that we would pay for my proposal is we pay for their first exam, and every exam after that, they're liable to pay for themselves.
What is the cost? Do you know off the top of your head?
I want to say $375, so we'd have to
okay.
pay for 12 of those. But let me double check that.
Okay. No, the reason I was asking is because, if it's very costly and we pay for it, do you have them sign a paper that if we pay for this you have to stay with us for X number of years or you have to reimburse us?
Oh, I see.
You see what I mean? But at $375, it's not an issue.
Okay.
Not a big deal.
Last bit of context, if you share with the council, would be about the early returns and successes of the paramedic training program and how that might fit into your staffing increase.
Yeah. So right now, we are eyeing our students will graduate in March, and we're anticipating we've got 2 full-time staff members that are EMTs that are currently in the program. They're both doing very well, so we anticipate them to pass no problem and for them to join as a paramedic. And then we have a third person who, while they're very eager to join our service, there's some more dynamic intricacies with that that'll affect that timeline. But the nice thing is it's given us this really nice feeder system to pull the paramedics in from the education we know that they're receiving.
And they're familiar with our facilities and our staff, and
Our facilities.
It's working
our
like we
equipment.
hoped.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
And the the true net return on it is really hard to assign a value to because of what we're getting out of the students. So
So,
I had one last question, I'm sorry.
sure, go ahead, go ahead.
Steven, so if they're not certified in 18 months,
2 years, if they're not certified in 2 years,
2 years?
here's my proposal. We find a new paramedic
Okay.
who will pass
Very
it.
good.
Our standard's going to be the top 1%. That's
Very
my
good. Thank you.
opinion.
So,
I'll provide that. I will invest in them with everything I got. But at the end of the day, they got to meet me halfway, and they're going to have to prepare for the exam themselves. So,
I wanted all that as context because what you're going to find is that this budget is one that outstrips our revenue projections for 2025, and we're going to use cash balance that we have going into 2025, and probably even needed a little help beyond that, which is what we talked about yesterday, moving the FICA and the PERF out of the EMS lit budget to free up some space there, moving that to county general. But we then, the projections, if the timing works out right, if things go the way we expect, the additional revenues coming in beginning in 2026 are going to start to fix the problem. So we've got to get through this 1 year where we feel like we're in this transition period to the revenues matching this new service level. And in the meantime, the other benefit is that we have a fully staffed service, that we have a fully staffed location on the east side, addressing Commissioner Hewitt's concern, all of the commissioners' concerns about not having equal service for all members of the community at all times. So it's an upgrade in service. It's an upgrade in the training level of the staffing, and we're putting it in place. We're betting on ourselves here a little bit that we're going to put this in place before the revenues really hit, but that we have high confidence those are going to come.
And then the FICA will do,
Well, yeah, we haven't talked about that specifically, but that would be the thing, Stephen, that is, I guess maybe the expectation could be, we can discuss at the time, would be that once the revenues have gotten to a point that they can support it, maybe we move that FICA and PERF back into the budget at such time that it can support it, but.
So just a little bit of context on that. That stuck out to me because I did a spreadsheet and it was to come up with the FICA and the retirement numbers. And as I was looking, the lit correctional facility, the lit EMS, and the lit public safety, the other two lit numbers, we weren't paying for any of the FICA or retirement from them. So I wanted to just keep those consistent. And that, in keeping it consistent, did help you, which was a nice benefit. I'm still seeing, as I work the financial statement, a little bit of lacking on the lit EMS. So I think we're just going to have to,
on
As
the
we've-
1236.
yes,
Okay.
not much though. It's not much.
But that's assuming 100% budget expenditure.
That's correct. That's 100% of everything this year is spent out of there. So I don't really foresee it to be a problem, but we may have to teeter back and forth a little bit next year and watch towards the middle of the year to see how we're doing. But Steven's great to work with, and he's great with numbers, so I don't foresee that being any issue at all.
So Stephen's budget is heavily salary based.
Yeah.
And so there's just, if we're gonna work with these numbers and with this program and I want to give Stephen a lot of credit for recognizing the limitations that we have relative to what the salary survey said, and that acknowledging that difference between calculating on a rate or on an hourly rate base versus the total compensation rate. It all comes back to that EMS does not get the same public safety exemption that police and fire get, where police and fire can work 48 hours before they have overtime, and he has to pay overtime on that above 40, and that just distorts the numbers like a prism. So, we can go through the rest of the budget, and obviously go with the fine tooth comb, and if there's anything you want to ask about, we'll talk about it, but we are to some degree boxed in by the fact that it's so heavily salary based.
Yeah, I don't know if I put everything together.
Yeah,
as a
we've got
Google
that one
form.
too.
Okay.
Yeah.
3.25 is the number for our salary and personnel benefits just associated out of the 3.99.
In fact, if you guys would look in your book, behind the actual budget books is the budget estimate form that has the entire budget for EMS listed. Let's that might be the one to look at, because that's what you probably have in front of you.
Excuse me.
I do want to throw this out there, speaking on using 100% of the budget. For 2025, what I would love to do is that we hold off on transitioning to this ideal structure until I have those two paramedics that transition from, let me rephrase, the two EMTs transition to paramedics
Okay.
that are currently with our staff. So that wouldn't be until March. So our
Okay.
first quarter, we would continue as is, and then starting in quarter two, we would look to change that.
Okay. That's
Just to
helpful.
clarify that.
That's
Give us a
very
little bit of
helpful.
money.
That might be your shortfall right there.
I will say that, let me say right up front, that if you look at this budget estimate form for the entire departmental budget, it does not have the adjustment, Brett, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe it has the adjustment for removing the EMS lit portion of perf and,
No.
yeah, so
No.
we can take those numbers in half and we can reduce this budget by that amount.
You said it was 244,000, right, Brett?
I believe it was right around there, yes.
So that's lines 0023 and 0029. Social Security, Medicare, and retirement. That
Right.
gets split half and half between the two budgets. And on one of the budgets, the EMS lit, we're gonna remove that and move it to county general. So you could take half of that number, whatever that's
It
what we
was
think is.
244,777
Okay, 244,777.
that you can take away from that, and it went to the county general budget, or the 1151. No,
No, it went to
County
county general.
general.
It's still in 1151, yeah. Now, if I haven't confused everybody to the point that they don't know what's going on, I apologize, but with that, we can
You're
kind
good-
of.
You're good at it.
We can kind of go through the rest of the budget. That,
While we're talking about that final number, sorry, before we move on, do you want me to share what our projected revenue is for 25 between lit and collection?
Sure, sure.
Okay.
sure.
So lit is 1.692. And then currently, I think that it is a reasonable expectation for us to generate about 1.5 to 1.7 million in ambulance revenue from transport through billing, Medicare, Medicaid, and private insurance. So,
I have one question for you. You're so revenue, it's really important that we get your revenue in.
absolutely.
Do you have what you need as far as office staff
Yes.
for this billing?
Yeah.
Feel confident in them, or do they need more training? What do you need?
No, I feel like we're actually moving pretty well. I'll say my phone's got the number on it, but year to date we're up 130 some thousand compared to what we were last year. So I think every year I've learned the system a little bit better. Sandy's doing a phenomenal job, and our billing partner right now, we were previously using Acumed. Acumed has been bought out by EMS MC, and I will say we're seeing I personally think that EMS/MC is offering more resources than Acumed had at their disposal.
Okay.
And with that, we're seeing improved communication, and I anticipate with all of those components an improvement in.
The billing is not an easy thing.
No.
And I just want to make sure you've got what you need.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. I think that we're moving pretty well with it. And, thankfully, our third party, they take care of most of it. And this may be important context that some of you may know, some of you may not. We previously, our rate was 6% is what we owed Acumed. We just renegotiated that contract, so it's 4.9% now for the next 3 years. So whatever we collect, we owe them 4.9%.
And through timely submission of billings, invoices, we've seen an improvement in our collection percentage. Is part of the reason we've started to see an improvement in our revenues. So
Right.
Stephen's to be commended for that. So those of you doing the math, the original budget request total was essentially, just we'll round it up, $4 million. We just took out 244,000 that we're going to move to county general. So I'm going to use, again, round numbers, say 3.75 million, and we just estimated revenues at 3.2 to potentially 3.3 million. So there's our shortfall that we expected to have for 2025.
Okay.
We went into the year with the EMS lit having a cash balance of 850,000. So we've got a cash balance to cover that and get us through 2025. We're going to start with a very minimal cash balance. You know, what we don't know yet is how much gets turned back in at the end of '24, how much would get turned back in at the end of '25. But if we assume those are all expended out, we're going to go into 2026 with a minimal cash balance, and we'll really need to see those revenues start to come in, or we'll have to move some things to other budgets or cover in a different way. But that's the plan. That's the way the numbers fall out.
I got a question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With the Trex program that different people are using,
Yes.
would ambulance service
We
fall
utilize
under that?
Trex.
Oh,
Yep.
you do as well. Okay, I'm sorry.
Yep.
Okay, good.
I'll be totally transparent. I was not aware that you could not do collections and Trex at the same time. So we transitioned to a collection agency, thinking that we were going to generate more revenue with the amount of, I mean, we had a significant amount outstanding, and I will say we got nothing. I think 5,000 was about the value we got after a year of it, so I'll take full accountability for that. That was a failure on my behalf. We've since switched back to Trex, and we're seeing an improvement with collections through Trex, so.
Good, good. Okay.
One thing we may want to talk about, and this is a little off topic of the budget, but we get on a monthly basis, we do additional appropriations for other Trex receipts for other departments, and we've never done that for yours. So I don't know if we've got a process difference on how, if he's collecting money through Trex, we never see that come through additionals like we do probation and community corrections and all. So you two might want to talk and make sure that we're being standardized on how we handle that. So that's an off topic, but while it's off on that topic, off the budget topic, but
Stephen, did you say, like a percentage, how much more you could get from these certified, critical care paramedics?
So, this is ballpark.
Okay.
I don't have the CMS fee schedule in front of me. I apologize. I can send that to you all, but
That's fine.
the critical care, we can only bill for interfacility transfers at that value, to be clear on that. But to go from roughly 380 to we're talking 850 for our difference in billing from what we're currently billing to there. So with the additional credentials,
times approximately how many transfers?
400. So now of those, they
meaningful.
do have to require they do have requirements that they have to meet to be billed at that rate. Some of those will not be applicable because they'll say, you know, this is not an acuity level that supports
Sure.
this. But I do think that it would be fair to say 150 would be within that ballpark of what we can bill for, whereas right now we're 10 a year. So
Okay.
Good move.
And I'm sorry to ask you to repeat it, but
that's okay.
I think that one thing that had kind of confused me in here, and I think you addressed it in the beginning, how many hours per, what's your work week actually based on?
So it's 55.4 is what we
55.
average
Okay.
per week. The way we get to that value is our staff does a 48.96 now, and so they're on for 2 days, off for 4. And if I recall correctly, it's like every 6 weeks they end up stacking a few really big weeks together because they'll work like, obviously our pay starts on Saturday, ends on Friday, so they might work Saturday, Sunday, and then they're back on Friday, and then they do Friday, Saturday, and then they're back Thursday, Friday. So they've got these back-to-back weeks where they're getting 72 hours of pay, and so it inflates that number from the 48 to the 55.4. And I know several of you now are new faces from when we dove into this, so I'll just explain further that when I started, we were a 48 per week system, and it was pretty much self-scheduling. And it turned into a disaster of, I don't want to work Saturday, I don't want to work Sunday, I only want to work Monday and Tuesday. I was promised this in 2013, I'm not working any other days, yada, yada, yada. I'll share it. When we switched to the 48.96, somebody had posted on Facebook, this is my first weekend I've worked in 10 years, I'm so upset. I'm like, okay. So ultimately, switching to the 48.96 has made it a fair system for all of our staff. Whereas like when I was hiring new staff, they're like, well, what days am I working? It's like, I have no idea. I can't tell you what your schedule is. I don't know. We got to figure that out. So now I can say, you know, for the next 10 years, I know, oh yeah, you're on C shift. So here's your schedule. So it really streamlined the system and made it fair for all the staff. So
And simplified the budget math. I mean, now it becomes
Yes.
a very predictable budget situation too. So
Yes,
that's
very
helpful.
much so.
Whereas before, we had some employees making incredibly high numbers because they signed up for every shift they could get, and,
In excess of double their base salary.
yeah, yeah, so. So we've talked a lot about so far personal services, the O1s. Let's go through the rest of the budget, starting with the O2s. Anything you want to know or address on supplies?
The only thing that I'll throw out is the EMS medical supplies. I separated medical oxygen from that so that we could better track that, because currently it's all going in together. And I wanted to have a better idea of what we were spending on oxygen. I'm sure you guys see it in everything that you do. Medical supplies continues to go up. We're just striving to find the cheapest, but most reliable equipment all at the same time. So, otherwise, in the 200s, I really don't have much change to it besides that, really.
Okay, flip the page then to the 300s.
The 300s, there are some changes here that to add some context, everything's been pretty broad in this budget, and I really wanted to make sure that you guys have an increased sense of accountability on me, knowing what we are using everything for. And so I really broke everything down, and in parentheses, I put the current vendor that we're using for these services. So one, it makes it easier for me, it makes it easier for Sandy, and I hope it makes it easier for the auditor's office as well. And in the instance that, say, we change medical record systems, we would just change the name from, ESO to whoever, insert billing company or record company. So I just wanted to break everything down and give you guys the full transparency component to it. So you'll see that through all the 300s, including utilities and office repairs, vehicle repairs, ventilator maintenance. All of that's now broken down, I think, more clearly. So
Well, you did say ESO, so 0309, that $4,289, is that something new? 0309.
Look at this budget.
Look at this.
Look at the whole, he's looking at this whole budget here.
It's easier.
Flip that page there. Because you gotta take that number you were just looking at times 2 for the whole, because that's only half the budget.
Okay, but there's zeros is what I'm just talking about.
That's because he's creating a new.
That's what I was asking.
Yeah, that's where
yeah,
he's,
so they were like Medicaid reimbursement, scheduling and credentialing tracking,
That's right there.
medical record system, and hands heavy. They were all clumped into. We were just clumping them all into the same thing.
Okay.
And so I wanted to separate all of that and make sure, like Medicaid reimbursement, we pulled from the Acumed line item. Well, that's not the most appropriate, while it's all ambulance revenue related, I just didn't feel it was the most appropriate. So they are new line items, and I guess I don't have 23s, the total
that's fine.
23 in front of me, but there's a slight increase in the total professional services to facilitate a cleaner picture here. So
Okay.
I apologize for not having that exact number for you. I can provide that for you in follow-up if
I'm
you'd
fine.
like. Okay.
I'm fine, yeah.
Stephen, when we met and had our discussion, I had in my notes that you mentioned 140 to 160,000 for remounts. Was that out of the 2024 budget, or is that included somewhere here in the 2025?
So that's actually for 2028.
Oh, 2028.
Yep. So we're looking pretty far ahead on.
Okay.
I guess I'll segue into that a little bit. Our ambulances, they're 3 years out. So they're the company that we use is Osage Ambulance. They are in Q2 of 2028 right now, is where they're taking orders. Can't get an ambulance before then right now. So we've got 2 coming next year, and then we've got to help address the increased costs associated with everything. My proposal is we do remounts for 2 trucks in 2028. And so basically they just take the box of it and they put it on a new chassis. And 6 years is, I would say, the absolute max we're getting out of these ambulances right now. By then, they're in excess of 100,000 miles, and we're having all sorts of engine and transmission issues with one of our trucks right now that's 6 years old, and we just put a new engine in it, and yeah, we're having all sorts of issues. So that's the idea. I will say I just got their proposed price, and it's gone up a lot since 22 when I got the first remount quote. It's now $211,000, where they're at $310,000 for new ambulances right now. So we'll save $100,000 per truck by doing the remounts, but these prices are insane. So currently, the truck prices for next year are $260, in the $260 range, and we're talking a $40,000 increase for 2028.
You know, it might get to the point where putting a new engine or a new transmission or whatever is the better option.
Yeah.
I mean, really, as long as we keep them from rusting and,
Yeah.
you know, if the frame's solid and all. Anyway, something to think about.
Yeah.
Doing our own rebuild, you know?
Sure.
Okay. Any questions on any of the O3s? I do appreciate having it much more detailed. I think that is helpful for me. We can start to see how those individual components change,
Yeah.
you know, within that bigger number, so. Anything on the O4s?
I'll just touch base, the Zoll 1 contract, that's the 4 cardiac monitor lease that we'll have for the next 10 years. The way that there is a caveat to the way we finalized the contract with them due to some issues we had at the beginning. We're paying half price this year, so half of that $40,952 is what we're paying for 23, or 24, excuse me. And then it'll be $40,952 from 2025 through 2033, and then we'll have another $20,000 in 2034, and that's when the lease will end. Dash and patient compartment cameras through Axon and body cameras through Axon. We're about to start a trial with Axon. We're looking to implement body cameras. I've got a couple ideas on how we can do this, and I actually think that we can save probably half of the line item here if we go to this new structure. And the idea is that the supervisors and myself would be the only ones that have the body cams at that point. So we would only need 2 cameras instead of currently 4. So we would save on that. And then the dash and patient compartment cameras. The big thing with the patient compartment cameras is that they're centered towards the narcotic box. And the federal government recently, I say recently, a couple years ago, mandated that EMS agencies move towards getting their DEA license. So we're currently working on doing that. Obviously, anything controlled substance and DEA makes me very nervous. So any improvement in monitoring and compliance with what their requirements are is best for the county and for me, quite frankly. So that's why that's in there as well. And then also in the instance we have a motor vehicle accident or anything like that, we'd have the dash cam for review. So we have applied for grant funding for that, but to be determined. So
It will be reviewed in November. And that ask was for 10.
yes. The updated quote I'm supposed to get from Axon is for 11, is what they said.
Okay.
But they still have not got it to me yet. So as soon as I get that, I can send it to you, Carol.
Yeah, let's update that because so we can make sure we got it exactly right before we resubmit. So
Okay.
So I am going to bring up that last ambulance. So you recall we've had different discussions probably over the last year or so where great partnership with Center Township. They've agreed to fund an ambulance for the department since such a high percentage of calls happen in Center Township. And so what eventually was agreed upon was that the county is going to purchase the ambulance and then we get reimbursed by the township over a period of time. What Brett, I forgot after we went through and double checked and triple checked the budget, that I still forgot to put that one in the budget. So we're missing one ambulance that we need to put into public safety lit.
It's in there.
No, that's the fourth one.
Oh.
So we have the payment here for 154, which is covering 2 ambulances, right, on the lease, and I believe that's the
It's the
final
last
lease
year.
payment
Yep.
of that one.
And
We
then
have a
there's
lease
one.
payment for a third ambulance in the public safety lit. I think it was 71, if I remember right, something like that. And we need to do one more. And then that's the one we'll get reimbursed for.
Center Township.
So we'll correct that. I'll get that in there before October, before we adopt, but that's on me. We talked about it. That was my assigned task, to work with Britt to get that in there, and then that one got by me. So as I was preparing for this budget today,
Yeah.
that popped back into my mind that I was supposed to do that, so.
So that will just have to be an additional at the beginning of the year.
Correct. But we'll at least acknowledge it, and make sure that we've got it committed on the record that we've got that one covered. Because we do want to make sure we get that at the 260 price
Absolutely.
versus the 310 price, so.
And how much will that ambulance be?
I don't know, we're gonna have to work through it because I think we'll have to determine, our intention is to just buy the ambulance outright.
It's about 300,000.
Well, it'd be 260, but we have the cash balance in that budget to do it. If we review after this is all done and we decide that we need to do that one as a lease or something too, we can do that. But I think we have the ability to just pay for it and then have that reimbursement roll back into the fund.
Sure.
Can I offer the context that this has been a discussion for the last couple of years, so we were aware that we were gonna have this overlap in '25 where we had the expiring 2
Yes.
leases and we were bringing in 2 new ambulances, so.
So we will have, and the bright side of that is there is some limited amount of relief then in '26 in the sense that we won't have the double overlap. So
Yes.
that's good. That's good news. That'll help this budget then, so.
And if we do go with the lease, then it would be, because of the partnership with Center Township, it'll be what, 80,000 roughly, for 3 years, so, for the one ambulance.
Yeah. So we'll talk about that more before.
Understood.
Okay. Any other questions on this budget? A lot of stuff there. And I want to thank Carol and Mary for taking the time to have the meetings that we did. I don't know how many hours. We had some lengthy discussions.
And Todd as well.
Todd really dug in, had a meeting with Stephen as well. So, and I know Jeff is pretty up to speed from your service on that committee going forward as well. So, anything else that anybody wants clarification on?
Nope.
I feel like it's a really good budget. It just required a lot of explanation, so I appreciate your patience in working through that. So in essence, the budget you have the presentation of the full budget in the back of that tab, and then that is essentially split in half
Right.
between the 2 funds. So as you look at those
It's
two.
easier to see this
Yeah.
one, this one, because otherwise we're going,
Yes, as you look at that, just realize that's half a budget.
thank you for
Thank you.
looking to see if you could save any place else and figuring out the best way to get the most revenue. And it's a tough task,
We're trying our best.
tough task.
And we're on the right track. I really believe we are, so.
Yeah. I just don't want to count our eggs before they
Yeah,
hatch,
I know.
Oh, let's count them.
Do you want me to talk about Dolores as the program director at all?
Yes, yeah, why don't you do that?
Okay.
Yeah, that's meaningful. That's material.
Okay. So Dolores, she's our paramedic program director, credentials, BSN, RN, paramedic, certified flight nurse, critical care nurse, and she is currently getting her master's in nursing education. With the salary survey, the way that it broke down was basically the EMTs and her were going to make the same annual income. It's not appropriate for her, in my opinion, it's not appropriate for her to be making the same as the people she's training. So the proposal is that we increase her to 40 hours, from 35 to 40 with the 3% raise. And then through discussions that we had with Mary and Carol, the idea was hatched that maybe she is not correctly filled in as a paramedic program director, and maybe she deserves a different title as deputy director or assistant director. And reflecting on it, I will say that I think that's an appropriate change. So I mentioned that to Alan and Todd, but I just want to mention it to all of you as well, that I think that would be an appropriate distinction for her.
So there's a process for that change.
Correct. And I've reached out to Cecily,
Okay.
and we're gonna, I'm filling out that form for the submission to the, I can't remember the committee's name, but
Job Classification Committee.
yeah. So I will be submitting that here in the very near future to coordinate further and have further discussion with that committee. So,
But for the purposes of this budget, no change, there was no other change but than to her hours.
Correct.
We went from 35, I believe, to
So-
40.
And then did 3%.
3%.
With the 3%.
Yes. In the budget that is submitted, now if we do the title change, then it will be 20% of mine.
Or
So.
right, 80%.
Or 80%,
Right,
yeah. Who, not
yeah.
20%. I don't think she'd like me very much.
Don't think so either.
Well, thanks, but no thanks.
You were going to ask
So,
something?
so she'll be essentially a number 2?
Yeah,
Okay.
well, she's kind of effectively serving in that role already,
Yeah,
and so
okay.
the, part of the reason we even thought that was it was a more accurate reflection of the
What she
job
said.
she was doing.
Yes.
So I guess I just want to mention that a first deputy and 80% of the pay would be for an elected official.
Elected official. And that's
There's a
not
distinction.
that's
Okay,
not
I didn't
necessar-
realize that.
Yeah, it's just elected officials.
Yes.
Okay.
That doesn't mean you can't do that. You know, that doesn't mean that we couldn't decide to carry that same rule over in
Well, I'm
other
glad you brought that up.
situations, But it's meant for elected
It
officials.
is.
Okay.
Thank you, Britt. Sorry, didn't know
It's
that.
okay.
Okay, any other questions for Stephen? All right, thank you, sir.
Gonna talk about mine at all, or just leave it as it is?
Well, it's in there. Does it, yeah, if you want to, go ahead.
If you find it significant,
Go ahead.
okay.
You go through the process of how we got there. That's fine. Yeah, because
Okay.
it was part of the discussion.
Okay. So when we switched to the 4896, the supervisors were going to make more than I was. So we adjusted my compensation to be 10,000 above that. Following that, with this salary survey, the supervisors would again make more than I would. So my proposal is that I take a 0% raise, but I change from 35 hours to 40 hours a week. That's my proposal.
And that's how this is reflected?
And that's the number that's there.
Yes.
Which is, I don't even want to know how many hours you really work.
Exactly.
But going from 35 to 40 is the least we could do, I would think, because you work significantly more than 40. So I appreciated that offer, and it solved a couple of problems, and that's what's reflected in here.
Well, and I'll give my opinion.
Yeah, you do it.
I think Stephen Sullivan, I know he works more than that, and 5 extra hours at that pay is a considerable amount of money, but I still think that he's selling himself short without the 3% increase as well. That's my opinion, and I'm throwing it out there. With everything else that we're doing countywide with people, and Stephen comes in with great plans, he's doing his thing, and
And we've said that to Stephen, and
Yes.
I don't want to speak for you. You can speak for yourself. You're right there, but you've declined that so far. I think you would get support from the council if you wanted the 3% that everybody else is getting, but
I'll just leave it in your hands. You do what you think is fair. I know what I think is fair for me and my family, but I'll leave it up to you, all of you. So I'll let you guys collaborate on that, and I guess I'll just withdraw my opinion at the moment.
so essentially that 106,286 is the base without the 3%.
Yes, sir.
And
so you're looking at $3,200 more.
correct. And so in that scenario, Stephen would literally be the only employee in the county not getting a raise. I mean, he's getting a raise, but it's a raise based on
But it's for
adjusting
working
hours.
More hours.
But yeah.
Yeah.
I
Well,
would say
paying-
if we're giving everybody a
We're pay- we're-
raise, then we
we're-
give everybody a raise.
That's,
Everybody
That's
needs to
what
have
Todd
at least
thought.
3%.
Yeah, you don't just eliminate one person.
And we've done that everywhere. If the midpoint wasn't up to the 3%, we moved it so that
So,
The 3%.
are you making a motion?
I am, yes.
Okay. Are you seconding? I think Mike had the second. He'd already kind of spoken up, so I am in concurrence with all that. All those in favor of moving to the 3% raise your right hand. Motion carries 7-0.
Todd and Mike, right?
Yeah, Todd made the motion, Mike with the second. Todd, thank you for bringing that up. You brought that up in our earlier meeting.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for all your work on this budget.
Yes, very good.
I don't know, the baby's born, right?
Yep.
And how's that going?
Good. Very sleep deprived. I think I'd be able to remember some numbers a little better if I had sleep. But no, everybody's doing well. 3 in 3 years is, whew,
Pushing it.
yeah.
Well,
So
think about 3 in college.
I'd rather not.
We'll be glad for that extra 3 years.
I was
Stop
thinking
that
more
way.
like, think about 3 when they're playing baseball or soccer or whatever they're gonna play.
Been there, done that. so.
Yeah.
Not sure I'll ever see my wife. Yeah. No, we're good. So
Yeah, congratulations.
thank you.
Okay.
And we're done. We're done.
All
Never
right.
say never.
I hope.
Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you all.
Okay.
Did you get my email, Mary? I sent it late last night.
Yet.
Okay, no worries.
Thank you very much,
Yes.
though.
All right, Rodney, Health Department,
Where we at, 13?
13.
I'm already there. Thanks, Bruce.
Okay,
Have a good day.
that was almost an hour.
Sure. Sure, okay.
Hey, Janet, could I trouble you to get me a glass of water?
Tell him no.
Okay, we've got 2 budgets, 1159 and 1161. First in our book, Rodney, is 1159.
All right.
So I will turn the floor over to you.
Well, the budget submitted to you was revised, my original budget was about 5% lower than last year's budget. I was requested to put in the additional costs involved with employees,
The salary survey results?
which put me up about 5%.
Okay,
We asked him to put insurance in.
okay.
I pay all the benefits now, not just PERF and not just the taxes.
Thank you.
As do a lot of the other
Yes.
departments.
Right, right. That's consistent with how we do
Yes.
the other departments. Okay.
So beyond that, like I say, my biggest thing this year was I changed my budget process around within the department a little bit. I asked all of our program people to give me as good an estimate of what they're going to need in that coming year as possible, considering support for their programs, for whatever events we're going to be doing, for whatever supplies they're going to be needing. Part of the change that we've been experiencing, at least with this year, is when you're adding more services, you're going to have additional associated costs with
Right.
those. So I asked them to be a little more projecting and a little more scrutinous to try to find what costs we're really going to have, rather than having to come repeatedly to you folks, as we've had to do, especially during pandemic and things, and ask for additional things, trying to keep that budget more streamlined. So this is reflective of that. We'll see increases in different areas in the 2s and 3s to help support programs and increased outreach at the same time.
Okay.
I also changed around the staff that were paid out of 1159 versus the ones that were paid out of 1161 to streamline the payroll process. Instead of having a bunch of split,
Okay.
tried to clear
That makes
that up
sense.
so it was a little more trackable.
I like that. Rodney, your first 2, health officer and health officer part-time, can you tell us, is that Pearson and Tharp?
Dr. Pearson is the health officer and Dr. Tharp is, the deputy.
So we have 2?
We have a part-time, but she's still job shadowing. That's
Really?
a job that takes, every one of my professional staff, it's usually about a 2-year training period or so.
Really?
So I would think that the health officer as well. I do have had conversations with the health officer, and we may want to bring her in if you want to, but I believe she believes that that position should be maintained even after Dr. Tharp were to retire.
Really?
But I would let her speak to that.
Okay, so, all right, so,
We need to, do we have a position created with a job description for that, for that second one? Okay, and is it called just health, what's it called? Sounds like you're referring to a deputy.
Well, it's the.
Is that what the
it's
position is
pa-
called?
Yeah, it's a part-time health officer, yeah. So I'm not sure how we titled it.
Well,
but-
part-time health officer feels different than deputy, or
Yeah.
first
Yes,
deputy, or,
exactly.
you know.
yeah.
So I just I want it accurately reflected
Sure.
on what,
So basically, his position is to be there for her to ask questions if she needs help with
Yes,
something, but
guidance.
otherwise, he's not doing, he's basically just a backup.
He also,
Teacher.
he still participates in staff meetings and any type of consultation with a outbreak, anything to do with policies that, you know, we're looking at that we need to address. His history is 30-some plus, 38 years.
Okay.
I always have to tell folks, when you take a nurse, for instance, and they've been out of school, they've worked in the public or the private sector, they come to us, they have so much still to learn that they've never learned through their training. Versus me taking one of my nurses and putting them in an ER, and they're ready to go. There's a time period of understanding how to administer public health, and that's certainly true of a doctor as well.
So do you anticipate this second part, this Dr. Tharp's position being eliminated at some point?
Well, again, Dr. Pearson's wish would be that we would maintain it, but I'll let her, if you guys wish to
Nice.
speak to her about that, then obviously that's a conversation you folks should have.
it seems like those benefits that you described with Dr. Tharp would be difficult to replicate in another candidate.
And again, I don't know what her thinking is. Her and the board, obviously I take my direction from them.
Okay.
And her and the board, I think, see value in having that. But again, that's a conversation that maybe you folks should have with her. And
Well, I
perhaps-
think that I would circle this as one to have a pretty serious discussion about for the 26 budget.
Right.
I would not move forward with the assumption that it's going to be rubber stamp approved for another
Sure.
year. But
Sure.
if it's the professional opinion that the job shadowing needs to go through another year, I'm okay with that. But beyond that, I think we need to have a serious discussion.
Sure.
Okay. I had that one circled too.
Sure, sure, okay.
Yeah. Anything else in the 1159 budget?
Yeah, I have one. Go ahead, Carol.
No, go ahead.
On the perf line, you're actually dropping your perf for next year, but there's been pay increases in longevity pay. But it's actually lower than what you're projecting for 2024.
That's because we moved employees.
Oh, okay, that's what you
Okay.
talked about earlier.
They moved employees to the other.
Okay.
the other
That
budget.
figure's not gonna be representative of what prior years were. Everybody was being paid then out of the 1159.
Okay,
You move the employees and their benefits,
Certainly.
yes,
Yep.
to the Health First budget.
I guess maybe just on a really high-level general question, we spent a lot of time trying to structure things last year because we had such a big transition, in the program and everything. Just looking back a year later, how do you think it went? How do you view the,
I think that the addition of the 3 employees has been greatly beneficial to the community. We've been able to cut through some backlog cases of children who are preliminarily tested for lead and then shown to be needing to be retested, and the cases unfortunately were just sitting there. We weren't able to promote getting someone to go back to the pediatrician, so we turned around and started doing the testing ourselves so that we can close that gap, because I believe it's 6 weeks goes by, they gotta be retested again.
okay?
And it starts all over. So we have an excellent community health worker who has been we've seen a huge increase in non-English speaking folks coming to our immunization clinic and getting the needed immunizations that they need. And a lot of that success is based off of her, not only just in being able to be able to be there and translate and explain what's going on, but we're building a trust within that community. And that's critical for our community because we're all one community. And at that point, if those folks are not equally accessible to our services, we're all at risk. So I think that position has been a huge benefit to the community and to our services. We also have someone that's there now helping us with the TB cases, which I explained in a meeting not so long ago that we've seen a huge increase, in the latent TBs coming in. This is all due in some portion or another to immigration that's coming into our state. They get initially tested, and then they're sent on their way. And then it's for every state to track that and decide, what follow-up needs to be occurring for either an active or a latent TB to be dealt with. So not having them staff members threw all that back on one individual. And obviously, that individual only can work so many hours a week. So, I think it's been very beneficial. Partnership-wise, we've had money available. We've always been in moral support and goal support of a lot of our community partners, but with this change in structure and funding, we now are able to actually give some financial support to those who are pursuing the same goals that we are, basically.
Yeah, great.
And we're trying to find that balance between how many employees do we need versus how many of these things can be carried out with partners. So,
And I saw in your budget, you have $100,000 for grants,
150.
$150,000, okay, I'm sorry.
Including, that doesn't include somewhere around 80,000 that's given directly right now
Right.
to those partners we already had existing, one
Right.
of which is Open Door Clinic.
Yes, I saw that.
Long-standing relationship.
I saw that. That's
So-
good. That's good, that's great, that's great. I know you're a busy place out there.
Again, I think what we're lacking and we really need to try to work on moving forward is sitting with the council and sitting with the commissioners and deciding how it is we want to administer those grants, review the applications for those grants, and how best to determine how we're gonna monitor those.
Right, right.
Part of that is the change in July of this year, where the counties are required to have a process in place. And I'm waiting on what that guidance will be, because I do not have a contract template. And I'm in the event these budgets are approved, I need to notify folks who are wanting to apply for those grants within the next week or two. Problem with that is, I haven't been able to sit down and get a grant management system in place that would allow us to put that out there, much more transparent, much more accessible. So right now, we're gonna have to do word of mouth.
Right.
Because we don't have anything in place. The review process is something we want to be able to have a transparent, third-party type
Right.
review board for that.
Right.
Which I believe if we include council, commissioners in them, and some other stakeholders in the community that aren't going to apply,
Right.
we can see, we're gonna be able to have an oversight of that, transparency, and awarding of grants to agencies that truly can do the work that we need them to do. So,
Right.
I think that's some future conversations that we need to sit down and have talks about, because I could go out and create the stuff I know I need, but there's a process you guys
Yes.
are being called upon to have.
Right.
And it seems ludicrous for me to go out and do this, and then someone come and say, well, no, we want to do it this way. So I've reached out and said, I need these things,
Okay.
but I need to be able to award these by the end of the year.
So maybe we need to create some sort of help for him. On that same note, Rodney, one of my concerns is, want to make sure that you have enough, I know that I think you're working with Purdue on data collection and stuff for the state, to make sure the state realizes that what you're doing is really good, because, we're looking at a new governor, and that new governor may or may not be excited about Health First money. So this Health First money could potentially be snatched away from us, and so I just, and I don't think it will be, but I don't think this governor is real thrilled about it.
And I offered
So-
to him personally to sit down and
Right.
speak with him.
Absolutely.
And extol the benefits of what all this is going to do.
Absolutely. And I think it's partly a big education piece, But just want to make sure that you have what you need to do that data collection.
Well,
Yeah,
and
that's my point.
And Purdue has reached out in a couple different capacities over the last few months. We've met with them several times. The rural health and migrant health people, project people who are speaking about data collection are going to do so on a very limited basis for us because
Okay.
it's so big and so
Big.
wide. I assure you, I've worked with 2 or 3 health departments. The gal that runs Allen County, Fort Wayne Allen County Health Department, has a wonderful system in place that they've already used 1 year and they've refined it and are using it the second year. We talked to those providers of that particular grant management system. The last word I got from them was they're in talks with the State Department of Health to be able to offer this same
Oh,
as you call it,
structure.
the sandbox or toolbox for every health department because they want to be able to show the same thing. That
Good.
the data is showing that this money is being used well. I think the idea that went from 2023 to 2024, we now have all of the counties pretty much in the state of Indiana that have opted in. And I think they're now seeing, I'm hearing that they're saying they wish they hadn't taken the money that they did initially, 225,000, lowered it to 150,000, so, or 150 million. So they're already looking at ways to maybe infuse the rest of that money back into it, so.
Good. Well, I don't want to take up any more time, but I just know that, it's $719 or something for that Health First budget, so it's a lot of money on the line.
721,000.
And then do you anticipate that to be a larger number?
That should be a steady figure, other than, the fact that there's opting in, opting out.
Exactly, because it changes
Yeah, we actually
depending on.
got a little more than, I think I have about 2,200, I told Britt I hadn't budgeted yet,
Okay,
because we were told after they did the recalculations, here's the extra we're gonna
Right.
give you.
okay, thank you. Thank
Well,
you.
that's a good transition, if there's no questions about 1159, to flip the page to 1161, which is the Health First Indiana state money.
Obviously, historically, we're in years 1 and
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
second year. We have almost double the money we had the first year. So, when you're looking at the change from one budget to the next, there's going to be a little bit,
Right.
very little to reach back to, other than tell you we're continuing to look to grow partners. Some of the things that came out of our retreats that we held in 2023 were that we don't know how to do everything, but we can find partners who can. And why not use those partners rather than to try to hire additional staff in, which has its own logistical issues, as well as,
Right.
there's a limit to that.
And I think that's what the state wanted.
That's most definitely what
Yeah.
the state wants.
Yeah.
We feel like small or medium health department, I still say that we're on the radar with the state governor's office and the State Department of Health on our successes, on our ability to follow along and understand what's really being wanted here. So we are espousing the idea of taking a good portion of that money, putting it out into the community partners' hands, monitoring and making it clear what we want done, and then getting the data back from them. But I believe that's even more effective than to just keep hiring more people, basically.
Right, thank
Yeah.
you.
I note that you have the 10% capital reserve in there, and I commend you for that. I think that's very, I think that's very wise.
We always pay ourselves first.
I think that's very wise.
In our pockets, so.
There'll be a day we'll need that.
And as long as we continue as we have right now in 2024, we'll have about 36, I think it is, from this year that will still be in carryover for that as well. We still have plans that we'd like to expand.
Right.
And build upon.
That's what I had in my mind too, yeah.
But we're also sitting on a large cash reserve in the 1159 still as well. I've been able to maintain that, so.
Yeah.
Thank you. Looks good.
Anything else? Anybody over here? Okay. Rodney, thank you.
Thank you for the work you do.
Okay. Highway.
Highway
Who's
14.
Rick, are you ready? Looks like tab 14. Good morning.
Hey, Rick.
Keep hitting this darn phone.
Do I have my stuff spread too far?
Well, it's either that or hit the microphone, so. All right, we have,
Just over. You got that covered.
let's see, which order? We have kind of an unusual order, or different than order we've had in the past. So,
Yes.
Rick, the first one in our book is the Cume Bridge.
Which is probably not in your order.
Seems like every budget we can say to some reason, some way is unique. But this one is unique in that when we utilize our monies, a lot of times it's in conjunction with a federal project that we're paying a cost share of, and we may have to advance some monies up front and then get a reimbursement. So it can kind of distort the numbers on revenues or what it shows as being spent. But Rick, if you can just talk to maybe what your priority bridges are for the next year, or if we have any federal projects in
Next year, our primary bridges is Bridge 21, which is on 750 north,
okay.
in between 600 west and 500 west. And after that, I think 2028, Bridge 115 will be.
Okay.
115 on Kelly Road, and Williams, and Alhambra,
You say that's for 2028?
probably. Takes 3 years to do a bridge.
Okay.
Um,
So my question would be, what, you've got 250,000 in for Bridge 115 for 2025. What purpose would that be then?
Do all the right-of-way purchases.
Okay.
And all the preliminary moving utilities and stuff like that.
Okay, great. Makes sense.
Also, should come up in November to be federal aid for Bridge 51, which is on, or not, Marbury Jefferson Blacktop.
Okay.
So, but bridge inspector wants us to do at least 2 bridges a year to keep up with the rate of,
Degradation,
keep them
yeah,
replaced.
yeah.
It was 2 bridges a year. Now, also, we lowered the amount
Yes.
for culvert pipes and bridge supplies. Was 100,000 apiece. We knocked it down. We took 100,000 out of there.
I do have one change, and Rick, this goes along with what we talked about the one day we made a change. There was one thing that didn't get changed in here, and that is line 2202, line 22, culvert and pipe. We have 100,000 in here. Actually, we have 50 in our system, 50,000.
Move it to 50,
Right.
Sorry about that.
okay.
I'm not sure where the state legislator is on it, but when I went to one of the training sessions, they talked about possibly splitting out bridges and roads, so that, because there's so much money in that program, so I haven't heard any more about that, have you? I don't.
I don't want to do bridges with community crossings.
You don't?
No.
Okay,
I want
okay.
to do roads.
Yeah.
Well, they're talking about so that you can apply,
Yeah.
because they have more money, so that you could use,
Right. Right,
you could use, you could apply for 2.
right. I want to do it on the road. I want to do the roads.
Well, it would increase the amount that you could ask for, like separating, so you could ask for a pool of money for bridges, pool of money for roads, which, that's something that may come down the pipeline later, which will be good for our budget.
Okay, well, if there's no other questions on Cube Bridge, we'll flip to the next one, which is local road and street. like we got a couple of pieces of equipment in this one.
Might be easier for him to just to go with his order and us.
Well, that's
flip.
true. Yeah, Rick, if you want to go in whatever order you have, that's fine.
That's fine.
We can adapt.
Hooker Road and Street, we got the 2 loaders we have to make a payment on. And the 2 loaders that we gotta make a payment on is a lease. We have the 6 dump trucks, we pay for 1 dump truck a year.
Yep.
Also put in there, we need to buy a pickup truck for one of my road foremen. And then take his truck and put it in the line, in the circulation for everybody else that might need a pickup from time to time. Need a crew cab service truck for the sewer gang. There's 3 people, and Raider cab pickup just doesn't work. And I also put $180,000 in there for a paver. Central Paving is supposed to have a paver come available in the spring, and we're supposed to have first chance at it.
Okay.
Not going to do anything without the council and the commissioner's approval. I just threw that number in there. I just looking at what used pavers we're going for, and I just threw that number in there just to have it in there.
Okay. If we approve this budget with that, you would not have to come back to the council. We would be approving now, and it would be up to the commissioners to.
Just out of courtesy.
Okay, okay. Well, just so you know. Okay. Any questions on any of those purchases?
Nope.
Okay. So that moves us on our book, Rick, to MVH restricted, which I believe is all truck drivers and then one item for bituminous, or all people, not necessarily all drivers, but.
It's all people plus budget, yeah.
And just remember, these are 50/50.
These are what,
They're
Restricted and
split.
non-restricted?
They're split.
Yeah, yeah, the salaries are split between
Right.
the restricted and unrestricted budgets. So really, not much to talk about there. Given the salary survey and all of that. So the next one on our book is 1176, or is the Highway Administration. It says Motor Vehicle Highway Administration. 530. How do you refer to that one, Britt? Is that,
Well, it's all 1176.
Yeah, this is all our.
1176.
Yeah, the whole thing.
okay.
What is it?
Well, this one's different than the one before. This is 530, Highway Administration.
Okay, I got it. Okay, I got it down as general for me.
Okay, yeah, your general fund.
Anything to say about that one?
Yeah, that's got the big numbers with the group insurance, social security, retirement, those things. Got the liability insurance, workman's comp, all those things are in this general fund budget. And then that's the second half of those other salaries then,
Yeah,
correct? Brett,
the next-
Britt?
I just wanted to point out, so on page 3, you'll see bridge and structural metals, 500,000. We moved that out of Cume Bridge because we weren't,
That's Bridge 60.
we moved that out of Cume Bridge just because we didn't have enough revenue
Okay.
to
Oh, I see.
keep it in Cume Bridge.
The bridge is historical, and it's all out of pockets, you don't get federal aid for that.
Okay.
Tell me again what bridge that is, I don't. What bridge is that, Alan?
Tell us again which bridge number that was. That the
Zero in Kilmore,
Kilmore?
Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Steel Bridge.
The Steel Bridge, right.
Right. Thank you. Appreciate that. Like to know some of these bridges because then people say, have you been out and seen this and this? And I go, I know about that. I know about that.
So in 026, that 500 grand for that bridge, is that the placement
Correct.
for it? Okay.
Yeah. The one that we don't get any federal help
Yes,
on.
okay.
Okay, any other questions on this budget? Okay. Let's hope for a mild winter.
Yeah.
Next one then is the wheel tax.
Yes.
Or did I miss one? Did I skip one?
Oh, no, that's it.
Okay.
I was already flipping to the next category.
Yeah, so that's the last one in this one is the wheel tax, which has always historically been heavily the stone oil and bituminous, and again is proposed for 2025 that way. So kind of is what it is.
Yeah, yeah.
Rick, you run a tight ship,
Yep.
good budgets.
And I so appreciate all of the work you've done to chip and seal more roads. That makes such a huge difference.
I
It's
think you'll find this year that pave it more too.
those of us on the eastern side of the county appreciate it. A lot of gravel. Still, we got a ways to go.
Did the final coat get put on the roads out by the solar farms?
Yesterday.
Oh, good.
Finished yesterday, I have an inspection today at 1 o'clock.
Okay. They were looking pretty rough with the first coat.
Yeah. They gotta pay for some shoulder stone now, I'm trying to
Good.
pay for some shoulder stones.
Good.
There's quite a bit of a drop off in a lot of the roads.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're rough. Yeah, good.
Appreciate it, Rick.
They're very nice.
Peace.
Okay. Thank you, Rick.
Did a good job.
All right, let's take a quick break because we'll wait on the sheriff and.
And they have been notified to come over.
Okay.
So Ashley replied, okay.
Is this bituminous? Split.
I don't know.
There,
We do all look good together.
Yeah, it's like fall,
No, I
fall
think,
colors going on,
I
yeah.
think it's, no, I don't think it is. I think he's just got it in 2 different budgets because one budget can't hold all of it.
okay.
You know, can't pay for all of it.
Last budget of the process here. So tab 19. Well, I'm happy to report so far it's been pretty smooth. Nobody's had to go to the hospital with cuts or bruises or anything, so.
I'm going on my second guy this week that's been to the hospital.
Really?
Yeah, one Monday and one today so
Oh,
far. So.
goodness.
We haven't had good luck with inmates the last couple of weeks.
Okay, so first on our tab here is the regular county general sheriff's budget. So I'm not, what we've kind of just typically been doing is opening it up to the department head to make any comment to the council on items you want to make particular note of. You know, kind of the drill. The one change maybe from previous years is that given that we did not do that early August review, we're diving in a little harder, a little more serious on this review than a regular first reading. So, yeah, anything you want us to know, now's the time.
So,
We just have to go to the microphone.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. We've been told that
Yeah,
people
well-
watching can't hear if we don't use the microphone, so I'm sorry to trouble you to do that, but.
so a lot of it is just a lot of overlap. So we never know what we're gonna land in the Fed fund. So a lot of times we'll transfer things into the Fed fund that don't necessarily need to go there. So 005. And I don't know where we're at on longevity pay or raises. This is all presumed off of.
So we're trying to do the midpoint of the salary survey, and the longevity is in there at $200 a year, $3,000 max.
Okay, so
For
that's,
yeah, so maxing out at, did I say that right, or is it 150 a year?
No.
$3,000 max, $200 a year, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
so that's the longevity pay. That was what we configured in the office. The one thing I would note is 030083, the buy money. It's also listed in the Fed fund. It does not have to be in the Fed fund. We did increase that because we do know how to full-time undercover. That will be utilizing those funds.
So can you talk about that a little bit on what, I
Not
mean,
much,
Yeah, what is that?
well,
Here, let me explain.
What is the time?
This is an officer that's dedicated to drug enforcement, dedicated to investigations that concern drugs and crimes against people. So that's where we have changed things and working with Frankfurt City and their task force and the people that they have assigned, we now have a person that is 100% contributing and also working with outside agencies.
So the buy money is the cash that they would use for those drug transactions.
So it really is
Does that
money.
make more sense?
it really is buy money, so.
Yeah, it's really.
I'm going, I have, my note here says, what the?
We're not going to buy dinars or anything like
Right,
that.
no.
So is there, what's the
Buy
like?
money is the cash money value that they take to exchange in a drug transaction.
So I guess my question is that assuming they exchange that money, there's at that point an offense that could lead to an
Yes.
arrest. Would we not get that money back?
Yeah, so sometimes, but not always, sometimes you gotta let it go to continue the investigation.
But then you can try and recoup that in the,
I guess my feeling is I feel uncomfortable using tax dollars for
Yeah.
that purpose.
Yeah.
And I would rather have it come from a non-tax fund than have it in here.
Well, historically, the buy money has come out of this line. It's been in 2000, but it is, there was a couple years where we didn't take it from the budget. I think we took it in 19, when we still had an investigator in that role, and then we took it this year, and then he made a request to up it because the increase in drug prices and the trend that we are seeing in the community, drugs are changing. Cocaine is becoming popular again, and so he also works with the feds as well. So, will we get some of it back? Yes, but there's a process in drug investigations with tracking the serial numbers of the currency and all that good stuff. So it's a process.
And you have it in two different budgets,
It's
right?
double.
It's double.
Yes,
Double.
because again, we never know where we want.
Okay.
Are they, okay, we're familiar with a little bit, I am anyway.
Right.
Is there forfeiting? Are they doing forfeiting upstairs or anything?
We are signed into the DEA asset forfeiture. Captain can back me up on that. We have a $34,000 forfeiture that is still pending from 2020.
Okay.
So the federal government takes.
That was
time.
always the delay, the time.
Yeah. So we do it when we are able to, but there's quite a process and a delay in that.
So we try not to lose that money, but no, we try and control that, recoup that money in the different ways, whether it's trial, whether it's, pay and arrest and collect the money back, but there are cases where some things go south and people disappear or quickly, whatever the case is. So I can't say 100% that every time we retain that $500 or $600 or $1,000.
So that's like a 12x increase over I think we had 2,000 in there before. Does it really need to go to 25?
Again, with the prices that are trending in the drug world, that was the request that he made.
Okay.
It went up to 20.
Yeah,
So-
it's at 25, yeah. Or the request is 25.
Inflation has hit the drug world.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
I had a question on that same budget about dues and subscriptions, $30,000. What kind of dues and subscriptions do you pay with that? I'm curious. I mean,
A
most,
multitude. I would have to pull the transaction report on that. We pay out a lot of dues and subscriptions on that one, various things.
and they're all needed and required kind of
Yeah, all
thing.
in the-
I was just curious. It's a lot of money, so.
Hey, Alan?
Yes.
One thing I just got thinking of, you was concerned about the buy money being out of tax money. Since we have an agreement by statute through commissary and the sheriff, could that be taken out of there if we add that to that?
You're talking about just taking the buy money out of
Yeah.
commissary?
Right. But that would have to be in our, ordinance, so to speak.
Well, it doesn't have to be in our ordinance. It'd have to be, we just have to approve it. We just
Yeah,
have to
agreed
approve it.
on by council.
It would fall under number 9, mutually agreed upon by council and sheriff.
Correct. So that's possible.
Well, while we're on that topic, let me throw this into you. It's another dual budget thing. I don't want to jump into vehicles quite yet, but there isn't a need for the undercover vehicle. What is historical with surrounding agencies is they do a lease program. That's in here for $22,000. So generally, surrounding agencies would have an agreement with a lease company so that we call it burnout. You don't want to burn out your undercover vehicle, so that if they got into a situation where they thought they no longer use that particular vehicle, they just go to the lease company and they trade out. And so that's in here for $22,000, and I think I put it in the Fed fund as well.
We talked about that briefly yesterday, when the commissioners had their budget, they
I heard.
updated you. Okay, so you heard it, updated on that. I feel uncomfortable doing that before I know whether the commissioners want to implement that program. I don't know how everybody else feels.
I know they've had it in the past, the sheriff's department.
The city does it that way too, through a
Our
leasing
city does
company.
it, Lebanon City does it,
Yeah.
counties do it.
Don't get me wrong, it's not about whether the program is good or whether we should do it.
Oh.
It's whether we want to fund before we know whether the commissioners
Right.
want to move
Well,
forward with.
Let me add a couple things here to make you truly think about what everybody wants to, decide what the sheriff's office needs. Everybody wants to put their input in on what I do need, what I don't need. What we do need is the ability to follow people and arrest people and put people in jail that are committing crimes that relate to drugs, that relate to children, and relate to everything that happens in this community. There have been a minimum of 2 arrests that have not been publicized to a great extent with child predators that are seeking children out of your community and your neighborhoods. And we follow those people, and it's kind of hard to do it in a Tahoe with a spotlight. And that's what gets under my skin.
We
Is
made
that-
4 arrests in the past month, and we don't put those
The
out
greater
there.
good should forego anybody's ego on what we want or what I think the sheriff needs. It's not me. I'm not driving it. It's not me that's going to be out there. So if you have an issue with me, commissioners, all of them, you folks, it's about putting people in jail that need to be in jail. It's about doing the job safely and being able to track these folks throughout our greater communities. And I'm talking from Lafayette to White County, all the surrounding areas. There's a lot of things I can't talk about, but I can promise you this. This has never been done in this community. It has been done over the last 2 months, and we're putting people in jail and getting them before judges so that they can serve time for soliciting children, for selling drugs in our community. And that's the thing that you don't see every day. That's the thing that I can't go out there on a limb and blast it, because then it interrupts the other investigations that we have. So these vehicles, and yes, it might have a sticker that says Trail Boss. It might have a sticker that says Z71. You can go to Tip of the Spear Upfitters in Lafayette and see that Benton County has bought the same truck and is upfitting the same truck to a patrol truck. Multiple agencies are using those vehicles. So I've had a vehicle sitting on my lot for over a year now that has 700 and some odd miles on it, that hasn't been used, was refused to be used because it was mine. It's not mine, it's the county's. It's for the use of the agency. So we've sat on this vehicle. We've sat on it, we haven't used it. We're bickering about what the sheriff's office needs and vehicles that are nondescript. That's an absolute need in our community. We have thousands of people that have come into the United States of America. You can go to Walmart and see it every day, that there are people that I've never seen. There's people in our communities. I used to be able to drive to the square, to the sheriff's office. If I see somebody on the sidewalk, I know who they are. There are a lot of unknowns in our communities anymore. There's a lot of people that are, doing the bad things outside of our community, inside our community. So that's why we ask for this. And it's just like the lease agreement, whether the commissioners want us to do it or not, it's something we'll find a way. We're going to do the best that we can. We're going to keep on working with the outside agencies, the federal agencies, our other sheriff's offices in our other cities. But it's not about what I want. It's about what the county needs. It's about being able to put these folks in jail, track them properly, and be able to move about and see these things. It's just hard to do in a vehicle that's obviously the most popular vehicle now is a Chevrolet Tahoe. So, and it's nothing against what you guys have decided what you're going to do, but it's something we have to address. And it's there every day.
Well, I appreciate, we can hear the passion in your voice, but we've never said no to you. Everything that's always come to the council for anything.
And I really appreciate it, but I think it does weigh in that you guys need to know, and I wish that, there's sometimes instead of getting an email that, tells us we're going to be in a deficit next year, tell me why we're going to be in a deficit, we'll find an answer. We'll absolutely find an answer. Because there's nothing at the sheriff's office that we want to put a burden on our rest of our community. I think that was proven when we brought in the federal inmates, when commissary sits at a level it's never sat at in years past. Things like that. We'll always work hard to do that. So it's 100%. We've tried and present everything, and believe me, we sit back and look at the ways we can take care of it financially. Moving on. Sorry.
Moving on.
Thank
No,
you.
I
Thank you.
appreciate the
Yeah,
comments.
thank you.
I appreciate the comments. So that is in,
And some of
that
the
is in two
subscrip-
budgets as well, I believe, correct?
It's in 2 budgets.
And some of the subscriptions that we were talking about earlier come out of that. And what we're facing now is we rely on electronics so much, Mr. Chairman, that you're held hostage on paying a subscription to maintain the software, to get the updates. And, it's different software that, we can download phones, we can do
The biggest chunk of
Forensics.
subscriptions is Motorola for Spillman. It's
Okay,
like
okay, thank you. That helps me.
It does. Motorola owns everything, and it's one of those things where I don't think I know that the other agencies that are involved with Spillman, that we host it, and I think they do pay a little bit, and Alan, you might help me out on that. I don't know if they do a fair share contribution, but it's something,
Yeah.
like with Spillman.
Yeah.
So I don't know that end of it. I know what our budget is, but it is not cheap.
So is it more of a service contract than subscriptions?
Yeah, we
It's-
call them
Yeah.
in on our side, and the sheriff is correct, because we have all Motorola's at the
maintenance
electric,
fee.
and
Yeah.
they're not
So I think
cheap.
it's-
I misspoke. Motorola's in federal fund. It comes out of the
service agreements.
I would have
Okay.
to pull a transaction. We do a lot of things that require like memberships and stuff, like our K-9 memberships, certifications, our drone piloting certifications. There's a lot of certifications that come with everybody's specialties and stuff. That's what comes out of that.
Okay.
Some training
But
software.
but our electronic stuff does come out
Okay.
of that.
The electronics comes out of the subscription thing? Okay.
Yeah.
That's like, I mean, and
But the Motorola comes out of services,
That comes out
contracts,
of the federal inmate services.
inmate services, okay.
Yeah, because it's like 60,000.
And that, I mean, I've watched the price of portable radios go from $800, $900. We're spent, it's $5,000.
I was just trying to understand,
Just a
you
small
know,
radio.
what kind of subscriptions we're talking about, and I may be thinking the word subscription in a different way than you're.
Yeah, it's not like
Yes.
magazines.
Yeah,
It's-
yeah.
When I wasn't thinking about
No,
that, I was thinking
it's dues
about
and-
the dues, you know, dues to me means organizations that you're a member of or something like that.
Well, in some cases, especially for our investigations and our canine handlers, there are subscriptions that are required to maintain their certifications.
Okay.
Where that would be paid out.
I'm sorry, I was thinking of something. I want to go back real quick to the vehicle or the lease program.
Sorry.
Did the commissioners pass a policy, a capital asset purchase policy? I kind of have a
Yes.
remembrance that you did. Okay. And so did that say what the order is? Whether you approve something and come and ask for the funding, or we do the funding and then they go ask you? How is it?
I think it was you approved the funding and then. we
Okay,
approved
so
the
it's
contract.
appropriate for us to go first.
Historically, the money needs to be put in
Okay.
place.
Okay.
I can't spend it if you don't approve it first.
And I do want to make a comment. So my sole job is to make sure that the finances run smoothly for the county. So when I do financial statements for each and every department, each and every fund, it's just my responsibility to look and make sure that everything's balanced. I think we need to look at moving things out of the federal inmate
I
fund.
agree.
Or doing something because it's so heavily in expenses right now. It's not, I mean, it's.
I would also offer, the way the vehicle conversation has gone this year, and I'm not up to speed on all of it, but it looks like a large portion of that line will be returning the cash balance at the end of this year.
Okay, that will help. Mhm.
So I'm gonna move off of the car one there now, and we've addressed the buy money. The one thing that I did want to try to make a change for was on the legal services line item. We have historically taken that out of commissary, and I
Well,
would,
that's another thing I would like to ask. We've talked in the past about getting another resolution.
correct?
You did the approval based on Judge Person's order, but Judge Person's order was in regards to legal fees that are accrued for defending the commissary fund, which is not, generally speaking, what the legal deputy does. She does our tort claims and our inmate, employee questions and stuff like that. So I would ask for a resolution for that. Or an approval.
Yeah,
for
yeah,
that.
what I was gonna say is that I would entertain a motion right now to approve that expenditure from the commissary fund, which is where we have historically done it.
Motion.
Which is Joe's making that motion.
Second.
And a second by Jeff. All those in favor of moving the $20,000 legal fee to the commissary fund, raise your right hand. That motion carries 7-0. So I just wanted to take care of that all at once. And then the other one on this page that I have circled, and it's no dispute on the number, it's how we've paid the number, is the sheriff's pension. We historically have taken that pension number and divided it amongst a couple of different places. We have the entire amount of the contribution as it stands right now in this budget, and
Which is what I do every year.
You did-
with the
correct,
auditor's
correct,
office
correct.
And determine the amounts, because there's like 4 different funding sources
Yes.
for the pension.
what I don't have a good comfort level is how much we can move to the other, what we've done in the past, and this goes back to the issue of the federal inmate fund, but the people that were funded out of, the positions funded out of that budget, we have tried to do their pension contribution out of that part of that budget, or try to,
We do have pension out of the 4968 for those 4.
so that, to the extent, that's kind of double advertised, because I think it's in the,
I just would rather advertise high.
correct.
That's what I want, yeah.
Right, I'm just saying, there is some room to adjust down on this police pension number.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I have a good feel at the moment, like we have there's a, I wanna say a service of warrants fund or something that isn't there a warrants related fund?
Is it tax warrant?
Tax warrants, I think you're right, that we can take pension contribution out of, and we have in the past, but I don't know what the balance is, because we typically only do that every couple of years to let it build up. So
How much does their percentage go up
Okay.
each year on the pension?
What
Percentage, how much does that usually go up each year
for,
for the pension?
gosh, I was expecting the number to go down because the pension's in good shape. We're around 6 million now. When we came in, it was around 2. But it continues to go up.
but I think it's adjusting for adding the new people.
Right.
Well, that's true.
Do you think it's that much? Yeah.
Well, it used to, what was it, 414 2 years ago, and now it's up to,
Like 514 or something.
Matt, do you have an answer for that? I don't know the percentage on that, Mike, but I can call Chris Calloway and get a better.
That's all, I was just curious.
That's why we employ guys like him, because I
Yeah.
don't do that stuff.
So do we.
You use Callaway?
Yeah.
Smart guy.
He does a great
Yeah.
job.
And speaking of the sheriff's pension, and it's not my pension, so it's the pension of all the merit deputies. It is an absolute solid where, the expectation is to be at market. We're usually 1% to 2% above that. And so, Baird and Callaway have done a fantastic job. Callaway is the agent, I guess, and then Baird's the company, but they do a fantastic job with the investments that Clinton County's committed to. And, in 19, we were, considering losing that ability to have that pension. And over the next few years, it has just jumped. It has been a huge increase, and so now it's comfortable and solid. And the expectation was that the payments would go down, but we did add, 4 merit deputies to that. So, that could be the increase, but I think it's paid off.
Yeah, we have him for our electric and water pension. He's
Very
good person.
Can, if I can trouble everybody to look real quickly at the federal inmate budget, there is a pension line item in there that Ashley mentioned. It is down considerably this year, and I guess I wanted to follow up on that. It was only requested at 11,000.
So that's because I think we've increased, Britt, you can help me out on this. I think that was one of the sources where we were paying the large sum, and it wasn't necessarily to cover the 4 employees that were in the fund. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like the 11,000 is the.
Okay, that's the literal amount for those
That's the equation for the
people.
literal 4 employees coming out of there, and I don't know that, I think.
Okay, that makes sense.
So,
That makes, and before we were subsidizing the
Yeah, 'cause
overall.
I was surprised too when I was doing the budget. I thought, why is that so high? But I leave it to Britt to rearrange for that pension payment.
I mean, that 11,000 is really shy,
That's based on the numbers I got from Cecily.
but that wouldn't be us giving you the number, that would be Callaway.
Okay.
So I wonder if you took
It was
that.
like 4% of the salary or 7% of the
4%
salary.
is actually what comes out of their check. So they pay the 4%. So you don't have to worry about that. It comes out of their check.
So what is the math you're doing on that?
So I did the 4% to see if that was the number you come up with, and it's 29,000 that should just be out of their checks. So that's way shy. I would go with more 20% for pension.
Well, last year we had 50. Can, I don't really want to guess, take a wild guess
I
here. So
mean-
we could do some figuring and
20% is 54,000, so we did 50,000 last year, so
well, I'm going to suggest we put 50 in there and be flat year over year, but have it in there, and then correspondingly lower in the sheriff's budget from 514, take that down 50.
Do you want to take I'm trying to get money, I'm trying to get things out of the federal inmate, so do we want to take buy money out of there and not do it in the federal inmate budget?
Yeah, you got it in.
Well,
think
let's
we
hang on
originally-
just a second. I don't want to get too far into the federal inmate before we deal with these others, but
Okay.
because this one was directly related to the number in question.
So
Okay.
we're reducing the 514 down 50,000.
Yes. What is that? 464?
464, 410, is that right?
Yep. Okay. And then some equipment items on our last page there, but kind of standard budget items, so. Okay, unless anybody else has any questions on that, let's move to the jail budget.
I'm out.
Okay, okay.
46410. What did you say for the pension in 005? 464.
464, 410.
And what are you doing in Fed inmate?
It's at 50. Which I know is going the wrong way, but we'll,
Oh, we'll
We'll
get
figure
to
it
that.
we'll,
We'll make another adjustment.
like, go?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, we got a big problem.
okay.
Sorry, all.
Okay, as long as you keep the lights on here.
It's not a light problem this time.
Can I be your proxy and vote?
We gotta go deal with the big lift station right now, so you may not wanna get involved in that.
Sounds
Come pour
complicated.
concrete for you, that's it.
Okay,
Okay,
and so, over the years, we have worked in the salary survey, kind of messed up our flow here, as I'm sure it did with everybody. So, we made most of our civilian positions equal pay over the years. I'm talking like records clerk and the admin assistants and the jail clerk. But the salary survey kind of changed that quite a bit. So in 380, the request is the salary survey, and then the total request line, I did what positions we had historically brought up to equal. If that makes sense. So like the records clerks, the jail clerk, and maintenance had a $13,000 difference between the two positions.
So that all goes by the categories for the job descriptions or from the job description?
Yeah, I just thought that was quite a jump.
Yeah.
we've had more of an offline, like a lunch conversation yesterday about, now that we've gone through this whole process, I'm not sure that, I think everybody would fill the job descriptions out differently now that they've seen how the salary survey result had the end of the process. And I almost wonder whether we needed to have an opportunity for revision for either next year. Or
I just didn't want 20 disgruntled employees because
Well,
some of them are quite a jump, like for maintenance, for example.
well, that's why we wanted, we were so pestering everybody so much about the job descriptions, is we
Nope,
wanted
I
to make
get
sure
it.
everybody was really getting paid for what they're really doing. And so, to the extent that maybe we have some of these things that maybe look strange, we need to go back and look at that and make sure everything was made based on the right inputs, is what I guess I'm saying.
Well, that was my input on that, is that we spent the last couple of years in budget bringing those positions up to equal.
So I guess I want to.
Mainly because of the importance within the agency, like the admin assistants brought in, the tax warrants, the firearm permits at the time, et cetera. Records, I can't tell you how important they are. I mean, we all know that.
So I guess I want to be clear, and I'm going to look to you, Carol, are the numbers in the book the salary survey numbers, or are they different? Are you saying you put in something different than the salary survey?
So the request line, I put in the salary survey midpoint. And the total request, I put the matching as to what I would have asked for without the salary survey to make them equal. Well, it's the salary survey numbers, but I'm keeping the positions that
What do
we've
we have in the
historically had equal.
And I put in the budget,
She put
the
these in.
total, the
This is what
higher
she
number.
requested.
Okay.
Because could always go down,
Yeah.
I put in the higher request, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
This is the midpoint.
So the higher request that you put in, was it tied to say like the high point of that range, or was it just a number that?
That I don't know. It was making those positions equal that we had worked over the last couple of years to make equal.
So these are, yeah, these 5 are all equal.
It's essentially our
In this
civilian.
So like the admin number
Right.
1,
Right.
I think that the what the survey would have said, and then you match the other 3 to admin number 1.
Yeah, so admin 1 was, the administrative assistants were the highest salaries. And then I brought everybody who was equal to that position historically up to that salary.
Okay.
I should have brought cupcakes.
Should have brought what?
Cupcakes. I can tell
So I see-
Carol
I
needs a treat.
I see your logic. I see your logic. What I don't know is I have no idea. I have no concept of
Yeah, we
how
need to-
those,
yeah,
how
we need-
different those job descriptions are and how they got categorized.
Yeah. You know, like the,
Yeah, I don't know about category, but I know that records clerk handles the inmate trust accounts, which is super important, and all of our other record keeping and the admin assistants are.
So you're not the only department that has a few positions that are like this. And
Sure, oh,
and-
I'm
and
sure.
we've,
Yeah.
we've talked about,
yeah.
you know, the need to have the committee review some of these things, and maybe we have to have either a final work session or a special meeting
Yeah.
prior to adoption in October to hammer out some of these things. What you're saying.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, I was just gonna say, what she says makes sense. I understand her logic, and I appreciate the explanation.
And I was just gonna say, we're meeting tomorrow, so.
Oh, you are? Okay,
Yes,
okay.
so we could bring this to their attention.
So we've got a little bit of a
You're
list
meeting
here.
with who tomorrow?
The job classification.
Oh, that's
is
right.
Yeah,
tomorrow.
yeah. You are meeting tomorrow. I hope you have it on your calendar.
I do.
8:30 though, not quite as early.
8:30.
The only other thing, was the PREA coordinator is historically just had $1,000 increase from the normal correction officer, just because of the little extra added work. And it was a very minor, I think it was like $100 difference on the, or maybe it was even equal. There was no incentive there to be the PREA coordinator, so I added 1,000 on the total request line. Historically, that position has had $1,000 incentive. PREA is our Prison Rape Elimination Act officer. They're the ones that take the, I know, right? They're the ones that take the complaints from inmates of any inappropriate sexual conduct amongst staff versus whatever. It's a role we are required by the Indiana Department of Correction.
I appreciate you bringing these to our attention, because, you know, we had noticed those as well, and we're trying to figure it out. So I think we need to go back
I do
to
too.
the midpoint, the high point, and the 3% and figure out what you asked for and how it works out to all that in a conversation that we can
I
spend that
I
time.
appreciate the context of
I do
how you
too.
came up with it
I do
now, because
too.
that does
I do
help a
too.
lot.
I do too. Thank you.
It's just my job to advocate for them, so
Okay,
that's what we're doing.
so we need to talk about that tomorrow.
Yeah. Do you have a list going? Because I'm making a mental list, but I haven't really written.
Well, I have a list kind of, I just need to go back and compile it. Yeah, we need a,
You might share your list, so we have it tomorrow.
Yeah.
okay, Thursday.
Okay.
Everything else, like medical and dental went up 5%. Not a whole lot I can do about that.
You know, and we have these budget meetings and we talk about cuts, and it tends to be the things you disagree on that you talk about. And I do want to take the time to compliment you that the sheriff's department in the jail is one of the best departments in terms of returning money back in. I mean, they do spend what they need and not more. And so I appreciate that and wanted to recognize you for that too. So,
I will say we lean on our commissary fund quite a bit,
Yeah.
particularly when it comes to uniforms.
right, yeah, I've seen that. Okay, flip to lit public safety. Fund 1170. Big number there is the 8 deputies that we fund out of there, or deputies, a detective, overtime.
Are there any positions in this budget, Ashley, that we need to look at?
Yes.
Okay, okay.
So same issue that we just talked about with
Sure.
the records and the admin assistant, the courthouse security, civil process, and the courthouse supervisors. Historically, we brought them up to the CO numbers and the shift supervisors in the jail because everybody is cross-trained. You'll notice we have fill-ins right now that are correction officers that are working courthouse just because we have to move people around for transports and whatnot.
And another
That
part of
says that
that
in the job
is
description, because I could buy.
it's extremely difficult
If
to
they're-
hire
If they're supposed to.
If they're cross-trained as
people
corrections
up here.
officers,
And,
that
and
they
I-
link to the correction officer's
We've talked
salary.
about it
I'm okay
here
with that.
recently, such turnover at the courthouse. And, and it's difficult. And, and it's one of those things where you like to get people in there that are gonna stay there.
Right.
But we're having a difficult time keeping people in those positions. And we've lost another one that, for medical issues, that we've lost 2 this year to medical issues. And I think it's the age of the applicants maybe and things like that, but I mean, it's just something that we have to deal with. So you will see the jail staff in here, and we're gonna rotate through them until we find somebody, people that are gonna be here for a little longer than what we
So to be clear, your request then is to have them, their wages equivalent to a CO.
So what we historically
Okay.
did was, and you'll see it in 1233 as well, the COs, the transport, and the court security staff and civil process are all cross-trained to do the same job. They all carry the same special deputy certifications. And so last year or the year before, we worked hard to get all their salaries up to the same.
So
so,
I
so-
will, sorry, I
No,
keep doing
go
that, I
ahead.
don't mean to. I will say this, though. We've also had the discussion yesterday that when someone would leave, that you don't bring a new person in that doesn't have the experience at the same rate as the person that left. Does that make sense? So like, if one of my staff left, if Marcia left, she has so much experience that,
I think that's why longevity pay was an important thing.
Is it like a
not
lower-
probationary, I just would not bring a new person in and teach them that job and give them the same pay as someone who has been there a long time, is experienced. We would start them in at a lower rate and not even probation. They would just have to work up.
I think that's challenging in law enforcement.
It's challenging without,
Lower than
Just
midpoint.
everybody goes a little lower, so.
If we're trying to get to the midpoint on
What-
everything, then we need to say new people come in.
So,
a pay
so,
or a matrix for, what are the deputies, Matt, help me out.
and I'm not even speaking of deputies, but
I know, but I mean.
But just
it's
in
the same
general,
thought process.
so if Mike came in and said he was gonna be auditor and make the same amount, I would, and he had no experience, I would be like, really?
I understand what you're saying. I think that's difficult particularly in corrections and court security when your overturn is so great. I think me and Cecily would be butting heads all the time over that. I don't know how you would do that, and I thought that was kind of the purpose behind the longevity pay structure.
Okay.
And I think one of the, in my thinking is that we're doing all this changing to get everybody to the midpoint. So in my thinking is that if we're hiring, maybe we hire at the midpoint, new people, because we're trying to get everybody to the midpoint. But if someone is way over the midpoint already and leaves, the new person doesn't come in at that higher, way over the midpoint, they come in at midpoint. But that's something the council needs to make a decision on going forward, don't you think?
And maybe it makes more sense for clerical than it does for corrections.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Like, we've been fortunate in the jail. We've been full staff in the jail for a while now. And that's pretty unprecedented around the state. I mean, people are hurting. I think Tippecanoe County's down like 20 officers. Marion County is down like 50 officers. So we've been fortunate that we can maintain the foundation of our staff in the jail. But for whatever reasons, for multiple reasons, we're having an issue up here at the courthouse.
And we have people that are interested in the jail
Hire people.
that would transfer over here, but they do take a pay reduction.
No, right now they're the same.
But depending on the year. So, I mean, as far as experience, yeah, it's difficult to hire somebody with, unless they're retired law enforcement, something like that. And as far as somebody transferring from the jail to here, because I have one person that is thinking about it. I mean, their experience is, you know, they don't have it with the general public maybe, but, you know, so it's kind of hard to fill that slot and say, you know, this is a requirement, or this is where you're gonna
Right.
pay that till you get it, but I think the longevity is kind of the helper with that. So.
That work?
So, actually, to be clear, on this budget we're talking about, the positions that we're questioning and need to look at are courthouse security.
Are you in the 1170, Carol?
Yes.
Yeah.
Courthouse security, civil process, and courthouse security supervisors, 37, 39, and 41.
Okay, got them on my notes for Thursday.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I just point out, we mentioned it earlier with Stephen, but this is the budget that contains that ambulance lease payment. You'll see that in there, that 91,000.
I was just
That's,
wondering.
that's ambulance number 3.
So we need to
Sure.
add one more.
Yeah, don't put it in there yet, because we need to figure out, we'll make sure the numbers are right, but
And
yeah.
I really can't put it in there.
Well, I
if we don't
understand, but I mean,
reduce,
just
so.
even,
And who does this get paid
January.
to? The EMS building?
that's the, what it is,
It's
it's
a
the
payment.
EMS building,
The payment?
the main EMS building out at the fairgrounds. We lease
Uh-huh.
that building with
You lease
with a
it.
buyback at the end.
I see.
That's that
I just
payment.
didn't understand the word lease, sorry.
Yep.
It's odd, isn't it?
Yeah, I just, I'm still learning.
That's okay.
Okay, any other questions on that budget? Okay. Moving to Lit Correctional Facility, the jail lit.
This was kind of my thought, Britt, if we needed to empty 4968, 1233 was kind of where I was looking, but I don't know how you feel about where that stands.
Mm-hmm. I don't recall its final numbers, but I don't recall it being.
Well,
having
my
an
only
issue.
my
I
only
know
thought
we
is
lean
that
on it for maintenance.
that was the one I was going to lean on heavily for repair because of that cash balance.
Yeah, and we got some big electrical and plumbing. I mean, but it's nothing this fund is going to be able to cover, I fear.
I'd highly recommend planning a new facility in the next 2 years. We're throwing
Well, I'm ready to talk about
hundreds
it.
of
We're
thousands of
throwing
dollars.
good money at I won't say the same that I've been told, but we're throwing good
Let's
money
talk
at
about
a
it.
failing
I'm
building.
game.
I mean, we truly do have to do something.
I know Tippecanoe County is housing juveniles out of county, 54 of them at $200 a night. FYI. I know we discussed in the past turning that into a juvenile facility and giving it to probation and community corrections. I know it would still be your problem, but I know community corrections has a state budget that would be able to help on that a little more.
And we've replaced.
And it would be a revenue source for out of county holding.
Chillers, boilers, and even if you went down to 2 pods and had the ability to hold 60 juvenile inmates, that's 200 a day minimum per inmate. And, you know, and your work with this as well. I mean, there are feasible and reasonable things that, I mean, I think the commissioners need to be in that conversation as well, what the use is of that building, because I think we've created the ability for it to minimize some of the other spaces, concentrate on those, and you're generating not only jobs, but you're also generating revenue.
To be fair, I don't think they just have to be part of the conversation. It's their
Yeah,
decision.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
their decision. You know,
But I mean, on the
but,
financial end of it,
yeah, yeah.
I think you guys need that portion of it, and realize that it's an absolute need in the state throughout the areas, and
I got
we have
a
a
lot of-
juvenile, we house them somewhere, it's $200 a night. I mean, there's no ands, ifs, or buts about it.
Any similar,
1233?
yeah, on 1233?
Yeah, this one's kind of a mess. Training supervisor, 1550, the transport officers, and 90. So the assistant jail commander, this was kind of odd. The jail commander, the assistant jail commander, and the corporal are the order in the administration. And I think it was like $400 separates those 3 salaries. It was like a $200 jump from corporal to the assistant commander, and I thought that was kind of
Tell me the order again. It's like-
odd. So it goes jail commander, the assistant jail commander, and then corporal.
Okay, thank you. So similar issues to things we were talking about in EMS. Okay.
I'm looking for the corporal.
Yeah, we're.
Corporal's not listed, it's just,
Corporal's in a different.
it's in a different budget,
Okay.
but it's just. Okay, so,
So like the jail commander, 66,590, the assistant commander, 61,204, so that's okay. But to the corporal, it was only like a $200 difference, $400 maybe. Let me find where that's at. She's in 11, or sorry, he is in 1170, so he's at 60,889, and then the assistant commander is 61,204, so less than a $400 difference between that rank.
and the transport officers,
They were again brought up to the same as COs in the last year or two.
right. That, yeah, that number should be 101,866, and you brought them up to 112, I got it.
Yes. Now, that position's a little different. They are subject to call out. They're on a call out rotation. Like say the city gets an emergency detention order, our transport officers are called in then to transport them to Howard County or Delaware County or wherever it is they are being sent.
Okay.
Okay. No, this is good. We made some similar
Sorry.
accommodations in EMS where we were trying to keep in track of
Supervisory.
yeah.
Yeah.
Levels.
We just want to make sure it's incentivized enough to where not all those jobs aren't always shining stars, right, Joe? You got to incentivize them a little bit so somebody wants to step into that role.
On the list for Thursday.
Okay.
How long are we meeting tomorrow?
I'll send a fruit basket.
Those cupcakes.
You're speaking my language, Jen.
Yeah, exactly.
Nobody wants healthy food.
We need sugar and caffeine.
Sounds like it's good and
Gotta look at my calendar.
I haven't had Miss Cupcakes, but I've heard good things about it.
Okay, that leaves us, let's flip through the federal inmate, is the last budget in that tab, and then if we need to go back and look at everything as a whole, we can, but, so the sheriff referenced the email about the deficit, and that was an email that I forwarded to the sheriff and matron from the auditor that was notifying me that, so when we submit these, there's a process that the budget has to go through, and after we approve it and adopt it, it goes to the state, to the DLGF, and the DLGF has to approve the budget for it to be official. And they can send an order back, it's called the 1782 order, and they can tell us that we have to cut something if they don't think our numbers add up. And so but they have a certain set of assumptions that they work on, and their assumptions are that all of your current year budget will be spent to zero, and that all of your next year's budget will be spent to zero. So they assume that.
Right.
And so what Britt was letting me know is that based on those assumptions, they're not going to approve the budget as it's in this book. There is not, because it works out to about a $700,000 deficit. Now, Ashley makes a great point, and I had the exact same first thought. We're not going to spend it down to zero in the first year because we're not intending to spend those the car line item.
And we have salaries.
We've got salaries, we've had positions that were unfilled. We know with certainty that we're not.
Right.
So that's a worst case scenario, the numbers that we were using there, but it does point out the magnitude of the issue that we have a $1.9 million request with a roughly $1.25 million revenue stream, and so it does require a little harder conversation. So that's why I think was the impetus behind Mike's question yesterday about when we could expect maybe an increase on the revenue side so that we could attack it from that side rather than it all being from the cost-cutting side.
Brett, can it help me understand? When I get a budget summary and I see a cash balance of $940,000, is that not the way the appropriation lines are? Is that what remains after the budget, or is that
So-
money that's not been allocated to the appropriation line?
The appropriations don't affect the cash balance. The cash balance is what you have. And when we write a check, it's double entry accounting, so it comes out of the cash and it comes out of the line at the same time.
I see.
So a lot of people assume that when they're additional, or when they're appropriating this in the budget, that we're taking the cash and putting it down there. That's not the case.
Okay.
So your cash is your cash. So, and I also, when I projected the revenues, I didn't put quite as much in as I could have. So there is, I can bump up the revenue some to help, but I also need help from everybody in here to make sure that we're coming in more balanced.
So I can give a little bit of context. Looking at 2023, our revenues were 1.274 and our expenditures actual were 1.474. And so that, at the end of 23, we had 775,000 cash balance. The 24 budget is also scheduled to be a deficit budget, so that number will be down probably another 250,000 to realistically 500,000. So even, that's kind of, we're just on a path where we're spending more than.
Well, we've done a large HVAC project out of that fund as well.
Good point, good
Yeah.
point.
We've hit it pretty hard on, the maintenance aspect. of
I'm
it.
not criticizing
mean-
any way it's been used.
And as far as the, like this year, there's vehicles were approved, we're not purchasing vehicles.
And that's gonna help.
That's gonna help, but, and then on the flip side of that is, do you wanna take the car line and put it back into county? And I know that's a no, because it's.
I mean, your
it's a needed thing.
600,000 is the two things we took out of county general. It's the vehicle and the sheriff service agreement line. Now, I'm not saying throw that back to county. I'm not saying that at all. The body cameras, we have 3 more years, 2 more after this. 2 more. So we have 2 more years of the body camera, and I'm not opposed to taking on let me throw this at you. I got like 68,000 in work release. What if we bought the drones out of work release?
Yeah, that's, because that was one of the ones I had circled as trying not to add new stuff.
That too, Ed.
040015.
So the way I guess I would view how we handle this is, so we could submit the budget that we want, and we'll get that notice from DLGF saying you have to cut. But at that time, we get to make a response, and that response is, it's now December, it's the second half of December, and we can say, we know now that we're not gonna use 100% of the budget, and so we're gonna raise our, we start to build our case that we just talked about here, and we can justify the budget that we have. It would sure be nice if part of that justification was that our daily rate's gonna go up from 68 to 80, or whatever. So I continue to say we need to show this from both sides, that we're gonna have more revenue and that we're gonna have cash balance returned or unspent balance returned, and we can make this work. I feel confident in that.
Okay, so are we removing the 40?
If you are willing to take that a work release, that would be a good,
If you're willing to approve it, it's not a
Yes,
statutory
yes.
item. Do I hear a motion?
yeah.
Go back to that, what did you say? It's not a statutory item. So does that mean that we're not allowed to?
So the work release, this is a historical mess. So the work release statute is very weird. It's oddly written. It's a lengthy written thing. I think it would require approval from council to utilize those funds. It's all in how the ordinance is written. The current ordinance, as it's written, does not establish the fund. That's why it's been ran out of a check register, out of QuickBooks, out of the sheriff's office since at least 2003-ish.
Probably.
At least, maybe.
So I know historically, in a prior administration, they purchased tasers out of there. I don't know the process. I don't know if they came to you for approval or not, but it was a $30,000, $40,000 purchase. So it is of my opinion, if the ordinance does talk about, so they are programming fees. And so the ordinance talks about the cost of the county to run the facility and provide things like the clothing and the equipment needs and whatever. So maybe you want to consult with your attorney, but is my opinion, it's possibly something you can approve.
I would rather have the commissioners and council say this is what we want to do.
Yes.
Than just do that, so.
Commissioners did approve, as a capital asset, they approved the drone purchase. Probably 2 meetings ago.
See, we just did that the opposite of what we said we were supposed to do. That's what we've got to get cleaned
I
up.
was just preparing for budget because I didn't want to come to you and then
Yeah.
get that on
But it
the
does,
other
it's an
end.
example of how we gotta start following the rules we put in
Getting
place,
in
so.
order.
Yeah, well, Ashley's right, I would entertain a motion that we would approve the purchase of the drones at $40,000 out of the work release, balance.
I'll make that motion.
I have a motion by Jeff, do I have a second?
Second.
A second by Mike, all those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries
I'm
6-0.
gonna abstain, I still kind of have
Oh.
a concern.
Okay, 5-0. Is that an abstain or a no?
Abstain.
Okay, 5-0, Mary abstains.
I wish I could clarify that more, Mary. The statute is like, it talks about different ways of essentially running a trust account for them and paying their bills in some weird order. It's, Mike might be able to speak a little more on it too. I mean, it's just an oddly written statute.
I mean, and what hasn't happened in the state of Indiana is the clarification of the changing of times. As far, and even with the matrons, pay and compensation and housing is to be provided at the facility. And, we don't do that. But there's a lot of things within the.
Still in the 1950s.
Yeah, we're still
so
in the
Sheriff's
early
Office.
1900s as far as the statutes and how they're written. So, we don't provide housing for the matron or the sheriff at the sheriff's office, nor do I want it, no thank you. But it is, there's some antique writings that doesn't address.
Aunt B, I would have thought you would have brought
we got
muffins
Bill
today.
Yeah, I mean, I could figure out DoorDash, so I'm saying I've never used it, but.
There's also a new position in this budget.
Yes,
Talk
that's
about
why I
that.
brought Captain here with us. So, we titled it Crime Scene Investigator, and this is kind of, and I do have 4 job descriptions, Cecily, and I have discussed this. We're in the early stage of this. So we have a lieutenant of special operations that currently does everything that would, I don't want to say everything, a lot of things that are encompassed in this position. What this individual would be in charge of is maintaining the evidence room, which is one of the biggest liability issues of a sheriff's office. They'd be in charge of the sex offender registry, which is probably the second largest liability. The trend we are seeing around the state is that these positions are going to a civilian. And so on the flip side of this, our thought process is the current position is held by a lieutenant, that we would no longer need that not the rank of lieutenant. I'm not saying get rid of that position, but maybe utilize that position and put them on the road and patrol, or a sergeant position, wherever the sheriff in the administration saw fit for that position. But this is essentially taking over our liabilities and making it a civilian position.
The sex offender registry is a requirement by the state that we maintain and we check and we register these sex offenders in the community. Obviously, we put some time and effort into the evidence process at the sheriff's office. And so, I mean, my recommendation would be is that lieutenant's position as a merit deputy, that rank is done with. That rank is not needed. The position kept as a patrol officer, and
Is that through attrition, or is somebody getting demoted?
Oh, sorry, somebody is retiring. The person who holds the lieutenant position is in the drop.
and he's done in April. So, it's that time where we can make the change, dissolve the lieutenant position, but keep it as a patrol, and then hire the civilian. And that is the trend throughout law enforcement, is to hire the civilians that will intake evidence, do the crime scene differences. And I'll give you an example. The state police, we used to lean on them extremely heavy for support in those specialty areas like evidence technicians. There are times where we'd have to wait 10, 12, or even 24 hours or more for an evidence technician to come to a crime scene now. There's not one in Lafayette. You can guess that the ones out of Indianapolis are busy in Indianapolis. And so, I mean, we're talking about,
I think our last one came from Maryville.
yeah, so it's not reasonable to count on the state police and for their structural changes, things like that. but they're even, they haven't even filled this position that we need in our area that would cover us. So it's something that we have to find a reasonableness to it, to fix it.
So currently, a crime scene investigator is brought in.
That's the person that will collect the evidence at the
Right.
scene,
Right.
take the pictures.
But I mean, currently you bring somebody from.
Yeah, we have to lean on other
We have to
agencies.
lean-
Not
we have
from
to
your
have
staff.
somebody else come do it.
So
Okay.
this would be a civilian position, not a
Yes.
merit.
This is a civilian position.
So
So they would handle crime scene investigations, they would handle the sex offender registry, the evidence room, and catch-all, whatever else the sheriff needs them to.
So I think
all
this
of these,
needs to go
all
to
of these
committee.
things are getting done currently. You feel that this other, the civilian position would do it more efficiently, is essentially what you're.
This is currently
A merit deputy.
not the crime scene investigator, but the other things we spoke about is a merit deputy lieutenant that is currently in this role. He also does special operations like when
Fair,
the
summer
county
jam.
fair, or the festivals, things where we have to have like the EMA plans.
So what?
That individual's in
I'm gonna
charge
go
of that.
back, and I'm sorry, I keep hammering on this. What is your opinion of the likelihood that in 2025, our rate's gonna go up on this fund? Because if that goes up, I feel okay with it. If not, I'm hesitant. Knowing that the jobs are getting done currently.
Right.
I mean, it's tough stuff here. I mean, this is real.
It is.
This is
It's
real
an
stuff
it's
here,
an
you know?
absolute. I would say that the rates are gonna go up. The rates will be up. There's also the probability that, it's difficult for me to stand every day, and Alan, you and I have had this talk, and it's about the cooperation of local government. And I know, and council, you guys have, always approved budgets. You've always worked to help us and to grow that office and to be what other agencies look, other counties. And other counties do look at our agency and wonder how in the world and how can we do this? What are you guys doing? I said, we've got a great county council, commissioners, and Bert, I'll speak to you directly. The interior fighting has to stop. And it's just like that truck. We've got a truck that absolutely could have been used over months. I'm not gonna beat that truck to death because that's just one example. And we have the ability to do a lot of great things. We also have the ability to lose a lot of great things in a quick fashion, without a doubt. And it's just as anything, I can walk away from federally and make fund and somebody says, well, we'll have to cut jobs, we'll have to cut this. There's a point in time where every person has to decide, does it affect me? Is it gonna be for the greater good of the community to do this? Is it for the greater good of the community to be in continual litigation? Is it for the greater good for the community to see all of that in public meetings, the chastising, the belittling, and it's one of those things where I have to go home every night and think about that, and I have. And there's a lot of great things that can happen in this community. If we drop this federal inmate program tomorrow, there's a county that just put an extra 400 beds in their facility and they want it. Because they want what you have, what we have built in this community. And they ask me, other sheriffs ask me, how in the world, why in the world, what are we doing? What are you guys doing over there? What's happened? Because we can't agree on what kind of truck or this or what we need to get done. So it's time to start agreeing. It's time to, we're gonna be passing some batons here in the next 2 years, in the next month, in the next 6 months. Not all of us are gonna be here, to build that new facility, but we have to be here to project that new facility. We have to start planning for what do we do if we get a new president in the United States of America and says, no housing whatsoever. We have to come up with that, and then there are hard things that we have to deal with, because it's an agreement. We're not held to them, they're not held to us. But it's an agreement that she has worked tirelessly on to make happen. And we can't even consider closing out a commissary issue that's been going on since 2020. We can't even get to that point. So at what point do I say, we're done with commissary, They'll get their basic needs that they need, and then that budget goes from, or that fund goes from $400,000+. If you were here in 2018, 2017, and 2005, we were at about 30,000 to 40,000 on an average. We sit very well in that. We do very well with it because of the work that she puts in. But we can't figure out a commissary contract that is obviously was there, is not there now, and we have to figure something out. But we can't get to that. We can't make it there without spending hundreds of thousands of dollars in litigation, hundreds of thousands of dollars in downtime that we should be moving forward, that we should be prepping the next person or people that want to become sheriff so that they have an idea of what's coming next. But we're not there. So do I sign this agreement? Do I agree to this agreement? Do we stay at the 68 a day? Do we move into the future and say that, hey, we've got a future here? Simple stuff. I mean, I feel like I'm a pretty easygoing guy, but I will tell you what I think. Sometimes that upsets people, and I will move forward with putting people in jail and needing the vehicles of undercover vehicles and different things like that. It's where we now are in a position where, as a county, we do, and we have done as a small county, because we're not the size of Boone County, we're not the size of Allen County. Sheriff Hensley, you were there.
Right.
We now have the ability to really do the things as a large agency, and we're getting there. And we can look forward to the population increase with industry hopefully coming out here on the west side, all the way out there. And, you know, Boone County and the housing, the different things that are coming our direction. So, I mean, it's time to start thinking about the future, because I am. I really am. I don't want to lose the programs that we have at the facility to provide to inmates, rehabilitation process. We're going on year 2 of tracking inmates that have been through a rehabilitation program, on their recidivism, on their fallbacks, everything else. We're going on year 2 of it. We're getting ready to graduate another class. Other sheriffs and other people in other communities, can I go to jail there? Have you got that phone call? I do. She does. I know people approach Matt Myers about it. He's been a captain. He has been here since 1994 at this office. So, I mean, can I guarantee you a 100% increase? Yes, I can. But I also want to ask for a guarantee too, that everybody works together in our community, that this office, the commissioner's office, and that we move forward beyond a few things that just kind of hung out there.
Sheriff, you know the council's ready to have that conversation.
So, I mean, I know we only have one commissioner here, and I think it is a time that, you know, we have to solve some of those simple things, so we just don't have that sitting over the top of us. And, you know, just like through the SBOA and everything else, I think we've got the guidelines, but it has to be reasonable. And, you know, and I think that's probably the biggest thing. Because if we turn commissary over to a general company, you're looking at 60-70% loss to that company's operation. With less money, it just doesn't work like that.
I hear you, and I understand your point, but I want to push back and only say that is completely irrelevant to this budget. I mean, I get what you're saying, and I understand the context.
But
and
the
all that.
relevancy of it is we can stay at the same per diem, and if we have to make cuts, we make cuts. And, you know, and that's where I have to take in consideration that, you know what,
But I'm saying the only reason we would be making some of those cuts is because we're not submitting the paperwork to increase the cost. And that's not the council not submitting. And I want Captain Myers to be able to tell the rest of the staff that it's not that the council doesn't want to fund it. It's that resources are being withheld from us.
we're gonna, I don't necessarily, they're there, and we're gonna make that happen. And, you know, as far as the agreement with the Federal Bureau of Prisons, we'll make that happen. And we'll get to.
I gotta say, you know, there comes a point I gotta stand up for myself. In 4 days, it will be 3 years that I've gone without a commissary contract, Alan.
I know.
But I've maintained the same program to the benefit of you, so that, like we talked about earlier, we're buying uniforms out of commissary. We're buying statutory required items like our bulletproof vests out of commissary that you are required to buy.
But Ashley, those are commissary discussions.
No.
They're not federal inmate discussions. That's my point.
I'm the person that does the work
For both.
for both.
Okay. But you're talking about your unhappiness about the compensation for one of those, not, you are compensated for the federal inmate
Am I?
program.
Is it in my job description?
It should be. Did you submit your job description
No.
questionnaire that put
'cause
that in there?
Mine's statutory. My job description is statutory. So maybe this is a conversation we need to have offline. I've done the paperwork. I know what it looks like. But I also know for the last 3 years, I've taken time away from my children to continue to provide for you. And there comes a point where I gotta put mom first and be mom to my kids instead of working late hours at that sheriff's office to support everything I do here.
The federal inmate fund is completely separate from the commissary fund. That's all I'm trying to say.
It is directly separate, and, you know, and that's an absolute. But it's also an absolute that we, you know, have to take into consideration what's gonna happen in the next few months, regardless of anything else. You know, that's, you know, through recent court hearings and everything else, and it's just one of those things where if, you know, I can't say 100% that everything's gonna increase or that, and, you know, it could stay at the same level. There has to be conversation and, you know,
We've gone through one of the highest inflationary periods in the country's history. Surely to goodness, there's going to be a recognition by the federal government that our costs have gone up. I would expect that our rates would adjust significantly and easily. Yeah, and appropriately. So I just feel like we're not doing our responsibility as county leadership if we don't submit that.
very good.
Are you doing your responsibility by not compensating the person appropriately that's bringing in the revenue to the county?
The last of my knowledge, there have been multiple offers that have not publicly been
That was
responded
almost
to.
half of my predecessor.
By flat dollar figures, it was considerably more than your predecessor.
My predecessor got 38,000 her last year. I
And
think
there
the
was
last
one
offer
at
maxed out at
47.
27.5.
There was one offer at 47. that
The
was
last
no
offer
response.
was maxed out at 27.5. I have grown the commissary from 200,000 to over $715,000.
It was not maxed out.
Do you think that's
not maxed out
a
at
good
27.
increase? It was, until I go back and get permission
Correct.
for an increase.
Justification, a proof of hours worked.
Justification. Okay.
Does
Anything
that have
else?
anything to do with our budget?
Not anything in this budget book, with the exception
I
of
think
we don't have enough.
I think we need to get on.
Well, we've got to decide how much revenue we have to work with, Mike, is
Yeah.
the point. Because a higher rate allows us to do more of this than the current rate.
Very good. Get a confirmation on the higher, what rates are, what's gonna be considered.
Hang on one second.
Just to some degree, the commissary contract discussion is a little bit out of the control of the council in the sense that it requires the commissioners, and we have to have the commissioners agree to come to the table. I am telling you right now, we will come to the table.
Yes.
But we're only one leg of the three-legged stool. So
Thank you very much.
how do you want to handle this submission to the U.S. Marshals? I guess I want to know what our revenue is going to be for 2025 before I decide whether or not, how I feel about some of these items. There's a big difference between 1.2 and 1.5 on the revenue.
I would expect the same revenue if, hopefully with an increase, but that's something that we'll have to, you know, if you don't get the budget approved at that level, then we'll make the substantial cuts that are needed. Thank you.
I don't feel comfortable putting the crime scene investigator in there with what we know today. I'll just say that is my opinion.
Britt, what's the availability in 1233?
What's the what?
The availability in 1233?
We'd have to double check. Yeah, look and see. And maybe move some stuff around. Is that what you're thinking?
We went into January 1 with a cash balance at $695,000. And that was scheduled to be a budget that was roughly even with their expected revenue, so I would expect that at the end of the year, we'd be similar. Probably a little higher because we got a special distribution this year on top of the expected revenue. But that was going to be the primary source for some of the big repairs if we needed to, so, I mean, that's got to weigh into the equation too.
Okay. You know, and one of the things, and Britt said it a few times about, you know, kind of taking the weight off of federal inmate, and, you know, I understood. You know, and it's just like anything. You know, we did pick up a lot of lines, you know, or the big lines, commission, vehicles, and I call them commissions, but vehicles and service, the service line. You know what? I mean, there's cuts, you know, if there's cuts, there's cuts. I understand that completely. But I can't guarantee you that, you know, it's gonna be more than the projected revenue of 24. I'd like to say that it would be, and I'll say it again, that, you know, there's a point in time where you know, if the position doesn't get approved, it doesn't get approved. It's not the end of the world. Does it keep us from being as efficient as possible? Does it mean that we have to wait on things a little bit longer? Evidently it does. So I'll leave it at that, and I appreciate it.
Before we leave that budget, let's talk real quick about the vehicle line item. Ashley, you indicated you watched the discussion yesterday that we had with Commissioner Brewer's presentation. So he had indicated we ought to be allowing roughly 60, I could go to 65,000 a vehicle, and that the plan calls for 6. Do you have a different view of that? That would allow us to reduce that line item from the 455 request.
I didn't get to watch that, but we had talked about 7, and they talked about doing 2 for this year, just to replace civil process vehicle in the jail van. But I asked Commissioner Brewer about that. I've got nothing back on that as far as, you know, replacing those 2 vehicles for 24, 25. You know, it's kind of one of those things where it's like, can we cut back on the vehicles?
Well, I guess I'm just saying, if we know there's a plan of action and we know roughly how much per vehicle costs, then it becomes a math problem, and it seems like we don't need 455
The
in there.
discussion of 65,000 per vehicle, you know, and the state process and what you can buy vehicles at.
That was just a number I picked. I'm
Right,
not,
and it's about $52,000.
Okay.
24.
plus
20
outfitting, plus the outfitting,
Upfitting is 12 to 14, depending on what kind of vehicle.
so 65.
K-9 vehicles cost.
Kind of where I was at.
I mean, K-9s are at about 6,000 to K-9 zero of that. It's closer to 70 because the kennels themselves are between $10,000 and $14,000.
So at 65,000, 6.7 would be 390,000. Right?
And I'm okay with rounding that to 400, but I felt like 455 was too much, given the discussions that I thought had taken place on a vehicle plan. So,
I'm not going to argue about vehicles. I'm over vehicles. I mean,
let's move that one to 400.
That was 7 vehicles at 65,000.
That was 6 vehicles at 65,000 rounded up to 400 to be an even.
Right,
No,
I'm saying the
455 was
455
7.
request was 7.
Oh,
I think
okay,
we were
I'm
talking
with you,
about
I'm
5
with you.
Tahoes plus 2 Traverses.
So I think the the thinking was is that some of that, or that 7th vehicle would be funded by the trade-ins. Am I right? If I
don't
remember right,
We have
Yes.
a whole bunch of trade-in.
that we'd have enough value to pick up
My
that.
understanding from watching was the expectation is the trail boss that's a year old sitting in the back lot is supposed to be an equal swap for a Tahoe, and I don't know that that's
Budget
going to be
is
the
anyhow.
case.
It didn't even cost as much as I thought.
That-
So I mean, that's not it.
Well,
Reasonable.
it would be that plus some combination of the other vehicles, we'd have enough
Yeah.
to pick up a 7th.
I mean, yeah, there's a possibility that, I mean, it's not a junk vehicle by any stretch of the imagination, but it's got some other junk vehicles, and we haven't even talked about some of the jail set vehicles that need to be replaced as well. I mean, you know, so not everything that gets replaced will be traded in to a certain extent. So I mean, it's.
Well, all this ties together. I mean, if we have more resources, we can talk about more things.
We've
So
leaned
let's-
on the misdemeanor fund in the past for
Yeah.
transport vehicles.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, with all that being said, looking at the yes.
Did we decide on the undercover lease? Because it's double advertised. Did we decide, is it going to come out of the federal and?
The buy money is
Let-
also double.
Yeah,
The buy money's a double thing.
Mm-hmm.
Is there an opinion from Mr. Weaver?
What do you think? I think we pull them out of Fed.
Yep.
I mean, it kind of hinges on I mean, I mean, I love you guys, you approve this, and then then I gotta come over here and ask Bert if, that's something reasonable, if it's not reasonable. And if you've got your walking orders or what you stand for, let us know now and we can move on. I mean, that's the hinge. I mean, it's something that's needed, but if the commissioners don't feel like, no, there's never, because the comment was that there's no need for it. Last time I checked, I don't think the commissioner's a sheriff. I don't think the commissioner's a policeman. The needs are there, but if it's not gonna happen, I mean, there's no discussion. So, I mean, that's kind of where I'm at.
I'd have to say it has been done before, and it is a good thing. Because, like Sheriff Kelly said, it does, these guys get to the point where they know exactly what you're driving and everything. We done it a few years ago. It is a good thing if we got the money and want to approve it.
I'm content to leave that in the budget to let you have the discussion for the undercover lease vehicle in county general, I believe it's in the sheriff's budget, and remove it from this budget.
Okay. And then the buy
No,
money.
knowing we've got the issues we have with the federal inmate, that would lead me to keep the buy money in the general fund budget, but I still have my hesitations about that being in the taxpayer funded part, which would want me to be a here.
It always has been.
I
If you
know,
want it
but
to
it's
come
just
out of
such a bigger
commissary,
number now. It's,
Happy to do so.
but I think we got to look for things to pull out of here. So I guess this is just me talking. I'm not speaking on behalf of the full council. I would go ahead and keep it in the county general and remove it from here. But you all can tell me you feel differently.
The lease or the buy money or
Both the lease and the buy money.
You're taking the undercover lease and the buy money to county general.
Out of inmate.
and put in the county, yeah.
I mean, we've just got to narrow that gap up some, and I'm totally open to this crime scene investigator position with a different revenue stream, but I feel like at the current revenue stream, it's a certainty we're going to be told to cut, so we might as well cut it now. But I'm open to leaving it and doing it later after we have an order and a directive from the DLGF to do so. We will know more information in December than we do now. So whatever the council's pleasure is. This is where you all talk.
Yeah.
I'm with you on holding off on the crime scene investigator for right now. I think it's a good thing if the sheriff can see that he can utilize one of these other officers or somebody like that for that position, then, that's a decision he'll have to make.
Yeah. One of the other thing that I'm thinking about is it's a new position. We have the job description you're working on.
I have 4 job descriptions.
Okay.
Cecily and I have discussed.
And we need to look at you put in 58,000, which it probably is right, but if we're doing the midpoint service, let's see what that says too, so we get it right the first time. So I'm not saying, when we do it, if we're gonna do it, we need to make sure we consider all those things.
We're looking for money, so.
Does anybody have any objection to removing it for now?
I don't.
With the understanding that we will revisit it if circumstances
The
allow?
crime scene investigator, as a civilian, the cities went to that. They took a police officer off the street and they hired an outside individual.
Makes sense. I'm not against the concept.
Yeah, they're more neutral. They're more focused on
Yeah.
exactly what they should be focused on.
I'm just saying this fund can't afford it right now.
Just trying to.
Right.
Look for money, do some.
Can any fund afford it?
Well, this goes back to what you've said. We've got to talk about a lot of things. And, the thing that's weighing on my mind is knowing that we've got to come up with either a plan for a new facility or a plan to renovate the current one. I hate to start spending the balances we have for those repairs if needed on operational things. So you've pointed out, and rightly so, before that jail lit, is intended for those bigger picture things, not necessarily, it wasn't originally passed to be an operational fund. And so I want to try to use it to its intended purpose as much as possible with that cash balance going to the facility. So that's the one that we have a little wiggle room in. But that's the one that we have the wiggle room in for the repairs. So we're taking a big jump in county general this year because your budget is one of many, obviously, and we're making big swings on salaries in everybody's department. So I'm hesitant to put a new position in there, particularly given that we're moving a couple other things already over back into county general.
Very good.
So this is not a no permanently. This is a let's remove it for now and regroup and come up with a plan, I guess is what I'm saying.
I would ask that you keep it till December.
What's the council's pleasure? I'm the only one saying anything here on this one.
So what's happening in December?
Well, December would be, we'd get the 1782 notice where we either have an order to cut something, or we may know more about whether we're gonna have.
We have a
an
better
increase in the
understanding
rate.
of our return, of what's returning to the cash balance.
That's true.
I'm okay with that if everybody else is okay with that, and with the understanding that that would probably be the first circled item to be removed if we needed to remove something.
Very good.
I wouldn't be hiring anybody yet, I guess, or doing interviews.
No,
So.
No.
not at all.
Okay. So the committee has some things to review. I think what it's looking like is that we're gonna have to have a work session or a special meeting. I'm not sure how that, we exactly phrase that, but we're gonna have some items,
Right.
to clean up.
I mean, the committee tomorrow already had things on the agenda before all this, so now we have to add this to
And
our
if you don't have
agenda
time and it's gonna
tomorrow.
require a little more time with another meeting, I understand, but we'll regroup and cover these oddball items, not just in your budget, but in the other budgets that we had similar situations, and then we'll have that all cleaned up for the advertised, adopted budget that would happen in October. Okay.
And I would just like to say publicly that I wasn't here at the beginning of all the animosity, but I would like it to go away. Somehow, I
I
would
think
like
we
it to
all
go away.
would, Ms. Price.
What did we decide?
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
We decided to go back to work.
All right. So that's the last scheduled budget to review. Does anybody have anything at all on any of the budget tabs that you'd like to review, go back, talk about, questions you have, uncertainties you have, anything? Especially I'll look at Carol and Mary as the
I'd
new.
like to
the
hear
new-
what is gonna happen tomorrow with the committee to see if I remember a couple things that maybe you're not remembering or something.
You mean like what the list would be
Yeah,
of
what the
things?
list
Yeah,
would be.
let's talk through that because I think
Yeah.
that might be helpful for everybody.
Is the public meeting over now?
No, we have not adjourned.
Okay.
No,
We
we're still
have,
on, we're still on and recorded.
Tomorrow we have,
We're talking about, the biggest thing was the prosecutors.
The prosecutors' positions were the
Positions.
initial
Yeah.
discussion. And then I think we added the auditors' two positions.
And the maintenance guy at Parkview.
Yep,
Yes,
Parkview.
yes.
And,
And then
then
there's
all
the
the-
sheriff's,
all
the
these.
sheriff's positions.
seems like there was one more.
Do you have one, Bert? Did we forget one?
What's that?
Oh, did you have something for our list?
No.
No, okay.
But,
Hang on just a second. Well,
Yeah.
let me finish this.
gotcha.
So the prosecutor's positions, the auditor position, the Parkview maintenance position, and then all of these positions, was there something, another
I was thinking there was
position?
one more.
I was thinking there was one more as well that was over, it was requested to be
HR
over.
manager.
I'm sorry,
There was a new position that
the HR, the HR.
right, that you had that brief conversation.
Like that we needed the job description and all of that.
Yeah, we don't have it.
That-
We've
It's just-
started on all
yeah, it
that
started-
in my office.
That's just gotten started, yeah. And the same thing.
That
with-
one, my concern on that one was not so much whether we needed it. I absolutely think we needed it. It's just I wanted to make sure we weren't getting the cart ahead of the horse because I wasn't even sure if we'd made the job description yet or anything.
Right,
so-
right. No, we're starting on that.
Okay.
I think those are the,
Very good.
I think those are the things for the committee to meet tomorrow about whether we get to them all. But it's gonna
I
take.
guess having gone through now a budget cycle with that, I guess I would also, feel free to talk through, to the extent that you feel comfortable, anything that you think would make the ordinance better. You know, is there anything we need to include as a better process or an amendment to that ordinance? You know, like one of the things that pops into my mind, for instance, and I don't want to get to where we're trying to think of every little thing in that ordinance, but if we have a position that's gone unfilled at an advertised salary for a period of time, does that trigger an ability to go to the high point versus the midpoint or something, you know, because the market's
I-
telling us we're too low?
Yeah, well, how's the market telling us?
Well, it hasn't been confirmed how it was, some of these positions were advertised.
Do we need to have a standard advertising process
We might.
rather than every
Yes.
department doing it
Yeah,
differently? You
their
know,
own.
those kinds of
Yes,
things, I
yes.
think, would be worthy of some discussion.
The
Okay,
other thing,
My only opinion on this thing is, from prior experience, when everything's set up like this, every time you have a new elected official, it's
they can
all gonna
change it.
change.
They can change it.
So
Well,
you-
Which is why I think I
This
want to have a
is-
process in
Right,
paper.
right.
That's
We
going to
have a
outlive
process.
us, you know?
Because they're gonna say, well, I want this person to do this, well, that's gonna change that job description.
and that's why they have to go in front of the committee. So
I'd like to ask Bert a question about the HR position. Are you thinking the HR position is going to be doing some of the work that this committee was set up to do?
I think it would help with some guidance, somebody would know, just like what you're talking about. I see the HR person for internally taking a lot of the load away that, in my opinion, we shouldn't be asking somebody and paying them a fee for when they can handle some of the issues here.
I
the,
envision,
the
I
whole thing
envision,
is though, with all due respect to all of you, my office does so much of it, so much of the HR stuff. And it's just getting relied on so heavily that it's not WIS that's getting, I mean, WIS, we're consulting them, but so much is just inundating my office right now, and it's all HR.
So what do you think?
I don't
about-
envision them taking the place of the committee. I envision them taking the role of Lori, who the committee would ask for guidance when they need guidance.
Right.
Instead of
And
this?
then what Britt's referring to is that when somebody comes up and says, well, how do I sign up for my benefits and all of that kind of stuff, then the HR person could take some of that. Maybe that's a bad
And-
example,
and
but
with-
Right.
you know what I'm trying to say,
And
the
would
day
this
to day.
HR person be in the auditor's office? Where would this HR person be located?
Well, it's, you know,
I mean, would it
I
be
don't
part?
know, I don't know, Bert's not been in on any of the